All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push one. Yeah, this is not the right one. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 515, Black Economics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Document description means the video for you to follow along with. Just as an FYI, we are not certified financial planners. If you want a certified financial planner, go to cfp.net, look up one in your area. Give a shout out to the people who first showed up. Super Triz, peace to you. Excalibur, salute. DE Raptor, shalom. Zero Defied, peace to you as well. Willie Little John, peace. Mega Montana, peace to you as well. All right. If you want to engage in discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Before you join the panel, make sure you download the latest Zoom update, or else you won't be able to connect. Let me drop the link for you guys who do want to join. And then let me get the docket, and then we'll be all set to go. All right, let's get started. All right, first item on the docket is from fastcompany.com. This map shows where low-income Americans are losing jobs. Expand this out. Over the past 4 weeks, a staggering 22 million Americans filed for unemployment. By one estimate, more than 14 million of those workers had low-income jobs, and as they are less likely to have emergency savings. They are in the most precarious position now. A new project from the nonprofit Urban Institute maps out where job losses may be highest across the country. The 5 sectors that have taken the most damage are food services, retail, healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. A disproportionate share of low-income people work in those industries, says Graham McDonald, chief data scientist at the Urban Institute. The researchers took data from Washington State, which reports weekly unemployment numbers by industry, and then extrapolated that across the rest of the country of jobs low-income workers hold by neighborhood. National numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics are only released once a month, and the organization wanted to provide a national estimate earlier to help with planning relief efforts and directing aid spending. So we can we'll pull up the map. An estimated 447,506 low-income workers have lost their jobs so far in Los Angeles County. In Cook County in Illinois, an estimated 224,916 low-income in total across all income levels. As many jobs have now been lost as had been gained in the economic recovery over the last decade. Estimate that the unemployment rate is between 10 and 20%. It may still be around 10% at the end of the year. We're hoping that this tool can be used to explore the equity implications of all, and where that money can be best spent, says McDonald. The Urban Institute works with other groups that are directly working on relief efforts, and use the map to map or explore the underlying data themselves. Some of the data from Washington State may not translate directly to other areas, but general trends such as the massive loss of jobs are happening across the country. The estimate of 14.3 million is even lower than actual numbers, since it doesn't include independent contractors or gig workers. It also one type of vulnerability. Other low-income workers may still have jobs as in grocery stores, but could be at high risk of getting sick and then losing money because they can't work. This is one, that number is very large, says McDonald. So it's definitely really worrisome. So let's look at the map. This is a map by county and by trade too. This is actually really good. Go to the metro area. So the darker the blue, the more jobs are lost. So we're looking at New York and Pennsylvania. Let me zoom in on it so people can see. And so we see a heavy blue and dark blue, or more cerulean blue, so to speak, all in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. And as you hover your cursor over the map, you start to see the chart on the left go up and down. And the more you spread it out, you start to see it move around. So, and it's estimated by, let me expand this out. And if we look at the Atlanta area here, where there's a dark blue, we see accommodation and food services, 150,000 job losses, okay? Actually, the number shows up here. So it says right here, Atlanta 442,807 jobs. We move closer to Mississippi and Louisiana. This heavy blue right here. New Orleans. Gulfport, Biloxi, 20,000. Pittsburgh. And if we go over to Seattle, to Washington, massive hits here. You can see a lot of dark, some areas of dark blue here. Let's go to LA. Actually, let's go to Houston. Houston is another area. See some dark blue over here. 200,000. Yeah, so that's a lot, man. This is something. But Atlanta, man, Atlanta is hard hit. So is Detroit. If you can, swing the mouse over here. Wow, Detroit, 300 plus thousand. Let's go to Columbus, 120,000. We got Super Triz on the panel. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, Mike V? What's going on, chat?
Chilling, man. Long time no speak, man. How are you holding down in school?
You said I'm holding down a what?
How are you holding it down in school?
I've been out of school, man. I've been working.
Oh, I thought you was taking those classes.
Oh no, man. I've been working, man, like crazy.
Okay. So yeah, this map shows estimated low-income jobs lost. It's actually a pretty good map. Whoever designed it did a pretty good job at it. But that's where data science comes in. And so at the top is accommodation and food services, retail trade, healthcare, and social assistance. I'm surprised to see that up there. And you can see it's always scaling up and down too, no matter where you go. It seems like the further out west you go, the lower down the scale healthcare starts to go too.
Well, it's interesting that, you see healthcare on the list and people think that healthcare is, pandemic resistant, but there's so many different aspects of healthcare that in the event such as what we're experiencing now, they're deemed not necessary. Like, for instance, at the hospital that I work at, like all of the outpatient, like elective type surgeries, they've been halted for quite a while. So people that work in those departments, under normal circumstances, would be out of work, but they've been like repurposed, and they've been used as adjunct staff for some of the people like myself who work on the front lines. But if you're in say for instance, if you have an outpatient clinic that's not necessarily attached to a larger inpatient facility, like if you only do day surgeries, those people are currently not working because it's not like mission essential. They're only like they're focusing all the energy on people that actually have ailments for which treatment can't be postponed. So that's something to think about as well.
Absolutely. This is an interesting map, man. And we're only at the beginning of this. This can go all the way up into June, July, August. And they're talking about, we read last week, two different Fed chairmen from Minneapolis and New York, both saying fourth quarter 2020, even going into 2022. Okay, this is coming from the big wigs in the central banks. This is what they're talking about from a recovery standpoint. I honestly don't have an answer as to what people are going to do about this. I don't see things bouncing back. I don't see the NBA bouncing back. I don't see NFL coming back anytime soon. NFL has a long way to go till September, but baseball season should be opening up this week or next week. Not going to happen.
What about the WNBA, Mike?
They got furloughed.
Hey, you know what? Not to backpedal too much, but shout out to Johnny Blaze in the chat. Mm-hmm. He mentioned orthopedics is taking a beating, and very interesting that he mentioned that because, well, this is all alleged. I allegedly had a conversation with someone in upper echelon administration, and they spoke of the amount of money that our facility is hemorrhaging to the tune of $100 million per month.
Wow.
Because of the outpatient services that they've had to shutter, and particularly orthopedics. Orthopedics, for anybody that doesn't know, for any healthcare facility that offers orthopedics, especially orthopedic surgery, this is an immense money maker for any inpatient healthcare facility. Let me say that again. Orthopedics is an immense money maker. These surgeries generate massive revenue for a facility. The money makers in a facility are orthopedics, OBGYN, to a certain extent, pediatrics, ICU, the ER, of course, because of the way the reimbursement structure is organized. These, for the amount of money you actually spend per patient, the revenue you generate per patient is exorbitantly high in those particular specialty areas. There's a couple more that I haven't mentioned, but in particular, orthopedics generates a large amount of revenue because all our orthopedics, like our entire orthopedic section of our hospital, which is rather large, has been converted into a COVID-19 inpatient unit. So we have a lot of inpatients that don't necessarily require ICU level care. They're being housed in the orthopedic section because it generates so much more money. This is like the nicest part of our hospital, to be perfectly honest. And they all have a single patient, these super large rooms. Like these rooms look like hotel rooms that the orthopedic sections are in. And because of the way they're structured, they're automatically isolation rooms. And so people that have the COVID-19, that's a great place to house them because the rooms are already designed for isolation. So that's where the patients are at. And so consequently, you can't really put any orthopedic patients over there. So at any rate, a lot of the healthcare facilities may be in jeopardy as well because they're losing a lot of money at this time. So some of the smaller facilities may be gobbled up in acquisitions. And then you start looking at people who perhaps are in upper echelon management whose jobs may be in jeopardy because in the event of acquisition, of course, they would eliminate redundancies in management.
Let me get to this next item on the docket from the NewYorkTimes.com. As coronavirus deepens inequality worsens its spread. The pandemic is widening social and economic divisions that also make the virus deadlier, a self-reinforcing cycle that experts warn could have consequences for years to come. Let me explain this out. As the coronavirus spreads across the globe, it appears to be setting off a devastating feedback loop with another of the gravest forces of our time, economic inequality. In societies where the virus hits, it is deepening the consequences of inequality, pushing many of the burdens onto the losers of today's polarized economies and labor markets. Research suggests that those in lower economic strata are likelier to catch the disease. They are also likelier to die from it. And even for those who remain healthy, they are likelier to suffer loss of income or health care as a result of quarantines and other measures potentially on a sweeping scale. At the same time, inequality itself may be acting as a multiplier on the coronavirus spread and deadliness. Research on influenza has found that in an epidemic, poverty and inequality can exacerbate rates of transmission and mortality for everyone. This mutually reinforcing cycle, experts warn, may be raising the toll of the virus as it widens the socioeconomic divides that are thought to be major drivers of right-wing populism, racial animosity, and depths of despair. Those resulting from alcoholism, suicide, or drug overdoses. These things are so interconnected, said Nicole A. Eric, a public health expert who co-directs a Center on Extreme Event Resilience at the University of Washington. Pre-existing social vulnerabilities only get worse following a disaster, and this is such a perfect example of that. Because each low-income family forced to accept a higher risk of exposure can affect others, she added, the consequences of inequality, while most obviously felt by the poor, put the broader society at risk. Two major risk factors are thought to make the coronavirus deadlier for those who catch it: old age and pre-existing health conditions. But a body of research points to a third: low socioeconomic status. Even for those well above the poverty line, studies find that low income relative to the rest of society is associated with higher rates of chronic health conditions such as diabetes or heart disease. This has not always been the case. As inequality has risen, health disparities have widened. Preventative care and health education have steadily tilted toward the educated and the well-off. As a result, people at the lower ends of society are about 10% likelier to have a chronic health condition. Such conditions can make the coronavirus up to 10 times as deadly. According to a recent data from Chinese Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Taken together, these two statistics suggest that COVID-19 can be about twice as deadly for those along their society's lower rungs. At the same time, people with lower incomes tend to develop chronic health conditions between 5 and 15 years earlier in life, research finds. Put another way, health organizations have said that people over 70 are at drastically greater risk of dying from the coronavirus. But the research on chronic health conditions suggests that the threshold may be as low as age 55 for people of lower socioeconomic status. Those numbers capture only a sliver of the ways that inequality can make the coronavirus deadlier. In China, many workers are employed informally and so cannot count on social services if they take time off, especially those in service jobs that require regular contact with other people. As a result, the people who can least afford care are often at greatest risk of transmission. In Italy, some workers like Morena Taco, who works at a factory near Milan, have gone on strike near their employer's failure to establish what they consider sufficient health protections as the epidemic spreads. Who cares about the workers' health while the rich run away, she said. But then poor people who need to bring bread home go out and take risk. Domenico Mara, who works at the same plant, said fear of the outbreak was rampant there. He worries about carrying an infection back to his children, particularly a daughter who has a weakened immune system. We do want to work, but we are scared of going home. We are scared to touch our family, he said. Government imposed shutdowns like those announced by France and Spain this weekend do come with some worker protections, but small businesses will probably struggle to keep paying employees beyond any guaranteed sick days, particularly those in retail or other sectors that cannot work from home. In Japan, which has some of the lowest inequality of any major economy, people with jobs such as taxi driving enjoy a degree of security that rarely exists in other countries. In Italy, in contrast, taxi drivers already struggling on hourly wages, undercut by the rise of ride-hailing services, scour for fares amid the outbreak. I got a mortgage, bills, and groceries to pay, said Andrea Arcangeli, a taxi driver and father of two from Rome. I can't stay home. He said he had made only 18 euros, about $20 in a day's work. At the Nihonho's taxi company in Osaka, Japan, cabbies have a modest guaranteed monthly income, and the president, Sakamoto, says he is selling off assets before letting drivers go. Still, even in Japan, those lower rungs of employment are hit harder than their white-collar counterparts, while office workers can telecommute with little fear of losing their jobs. Mr. Sakamoto says that if business does not pick up in a few months, he may have to let drivers go. When inequality is high, the cost of living tends to rise, forcing more lower-income families to live paycheck to paycheck. At the same time, the decline of labor unions and the rise of part-time work means that low-income workers have fewer protections. As a result, crises like coronavirus can deepen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Laura Fucenti, a waitress in the suburb of Milan, was barely covering her mortgage and car payments before the epidemic hit. As hourly work evaporates, she has fallen behind. I am not ashamed to say I did not pay my bills this month, she said. I had to choose between those and groceries, she says. More even than catching the coronavirus, that her son's school will reopen before she gets work, bringing gas and school lunch bills she can't afford. Unequal access to healthcare in any country makes getting sick especially expensive for the poor. In the United States, 90% of people whose income is in the top quarter have paid sick leave at work, while only 47% of those in the bottom quarter do. Last year, 26% of Americans deferred healthcare because they could not afford it. One Gallup poll found in another survey, 1 in 4 said someone in their family had skipped a doctor-recommended test they could not afford, and 1 in 6 said that someone in their family had skipped prescribed medication. Health experts fear that these costs will accelerate outbreaks, particularly as stories circulate of 4-digit bills for coronavirus testing or treatment. This can affect everyone. One study in the United States found that state-mandated sick day policies reduced the spread of an influenza epidemic by up to 40%. Most states have no such policy and could see far more infections as a result. Labor inequality and poor workplace protections may exacerbate the spread of the norovirus, a highly contagious stomach bug. Research by the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention found that 1 in 5 food service employees went to work while sick, with vomiting and diarrhea for fear of losing their job if they stayed home, turning restaurants into vectors for norovirus outbreaks. Such conditions may have severely elongated the H1N1 epidemic in the United States, which killed 12,469 Americans in 2009 and 2010, according to a study by the Institute of Women's Policy Research. All right, I'm not going to read the rest of this, but we know what the message is here. If you if you're in the, I think we covered it last week. I think if you're in the 44 percentile of income earners in this country, you are at risk. Anything below 27,000, 30,000, actually it's anything below 35,000, you're at risk of income per household. Paul Bryant says Mike V, over a year ago, I said everything in this article practically word for word as the social economic placement and mindsets, and I got massive resistance for being observant. Maybe you were the one that wrote the article, Paul. Who knows? Oh, I see people trying to get in. Okay. Yeah, we've been saying this for a while now, and it's not just Paul Bryant. Paul Bryant is a great contributor here, but we have been saying this for a while that Black people are going to be hit most by all of this, and even the recession itself. Before the pandemic broke out, that the recession was going to have a major impact on Black people. That it was going to run right through their savings, whatever little savings they had, which is $400 or less. Now you compound that with a pandemic like this, and you can see how this is very much, if you don't get sick, you're actually going to be impacted by the job loss. One or the other, you're going to take one of those bullets. We do have Renaissance Man and Mrs. Evolving on the panel. Good evening to you all.
What's up, Mike?
What's going on, bro?
Nothing much, nothing much.
All right. Anything you want to contribute to this?
Nah, just kind of sobering for some people. I've seen, I've followed politics pretty closely, and I've just seen the inequality. I mean, really, at least here in the United States, you've had pretty much since the 60s sort of an eroding of all the things that created the middle class in this country, and it's coming full head right now. So hopefully some good reforms come out of it, but
and we don't know where this is going to stop, because we covered this last week, but the Fed chairman is saying, end of 2020, fourth quarter. Other Fed chairman of Minneapolis is saying this can go on until 2022.
I mean, I don't even know if they fully know the impact, because I mean, when you start talking about like things like sports not coming back, I mean, all these like college towns, or that was the other thing. I was on a message board and someone was saying a college had already sent out, my alma mater had sent out a note to the students saying, hey, what would be your response to online classes in the fall? So, I mean, if you have that drop in enrollment, no football, no basketball, I mean, it's just going to do so much to the economies around there that depend on all that stuff. So,
yeah, the NCAA is going to eat it. All those big stadiums they built recently, what use is it now?
Yeah.
You talk about like some of these colleges, a lot of the revenue that they generate from parking, from on campus cantina services, like it's so much more involved than you think. The transition to online classes is enough to keep them afloat, but they're going to have to do some major modifications to their business models because they're going to be down substantially in revenue. What's interesting, Mike, is when you mentioned I guess you said the 44th percentile are those that are most greatly affected. I believe that was the number you were.
Yeah, well, the 44 percentile of those who make less than I think it's 35 grand a year or something like that are going to be most impacted by the pandemic, because they are a part of that service class, right? That working service class in the service sector.
But what's interesting, Mike, is that we look at that income, and then we kind of associate that with people who are kind of just making ends meet and really probably don't have a lot in savings. But this past week, I was talking to some of my coworkers, just various conversations, and it was very revealing that a lot of these individuals that I work with, who, mind you, they're making six figures, all of them, and they don't have any money in savings either. Like, I was talking to one of the guys, and he's like, he was talking about like, that, at some point he wants to buy a house. And so we were talking about numbers and budgets, and, then he talked about how much money he didn't have saved. And I'm like, well, I mean, you've been working here how long? You don't have any money saved? Like, where's all your money going? And then I was talking to, I was, just on my break, I was looking at, because that watch stream that we did had got me itching for a Rolex. I was looking at Rolexes online. Mm-hmm. And then the girl was like, was asking how much it cost. And I was telling her how much, some of the watches cost. And she was like, I wish I had that kind of money sitting around. I'm looking at her like, I know how much money you make. Why don't you have that kind of money sitting around? Why don't you have anything in your savings account? People who make good money are living from paycheck to paycheck. And I think that this pandemic is a big eye opener for people to start, looking at money from a different perspective. Like, nothing is promised in this day and age. And, people like Dave Ramsey, I'm not a big proponent of his ethos, but there's some things that I kind of agree with. People are flocking to his channel in droves now because, people have totally been irresponsible, actually to the point of being reckless from a financial standpoint. And, even people who think that their jobs are secure and make good money are not making good decisions with the money that they make.
Yeah. My dealership actually called me or contacted me this week and it was offering me a vehicle 30% off.
30%?
Yeah, 30% off.
That's correct.
0 miles, 30% off. Take it, please.
Wow. And
what kind of car is this?
It's a Volkswagen, brand new Volkswagen.
30% off. Wow.
Was it just that one or that model? Anything you want, come choose it and 30% off, or what? Or one specific car?
It was a Golf. It was a Golf. 30% off.
Wow. And you're only at the beginning. We're about a month in, a little bit over a month in.
Yeah. This is what it's coming down to.
Yeah, and kind of like Tris. Oh, go ahead, Tris.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say with what you're saying as well too. I believe I saw a study a while ago that said I want to say it was 70% of Americans didn't have $1,000 in savings. So I mean, what you're saying about living paycheck to paycheck is dead on. And when that shoe drops, it's just gonna hurt the economy even more because people are gonna stop spending money. So
yeah, well, go ahead, Trish. You were gonna say something.
No, that I dropped my phone and accidentally unmuted it when I tried to catch it. That was all that was. I'm at home working on my Bowflex right now. So I got my Bowflex for 90% off. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, I hear you, man. Craigslist is popping with a whole bunch of equipment on there, man. Crazy. You got to pick up at the curb though. They don't want to see you face to face. What's interesting about the article talking about Italy and some of these European countries, I thought the whole purpose of the European Union was supposed to be so great. You see people living in dire straits of poverty, almost similar to that of Black people in America. You had a European woman saying, "Yeah, I didn't pay my bills this month. What else you want me to do? I can't work." But when you try to explain that to people here, oh no, this is all manufactured and it's not real, it's not accurate. Yeah, okay. We'll see in June when India opens up, they're talking about June 30th, they're going to open up the streets. You got states here that are saying just today they're going to open up the streets, but in India, they're saying we're not opening up until June. That's a long time, man.
Yeah, Georgia's the main one.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Complex?
What's up, man?
Not much.
Yeah. I mean, looking at that previous map, a lot of Philly's been hit hard. Philly and Pittsburgh hit hard. That's, the coal miners, the steel workers who were on the edge before that, because of the trade war, this compounded it, exacerbated it even further. So yo, Paul Bryant's calling you out in the chat, man. Super Triz.
Yeah, I see Paul Bryant with that slick talk, but I tell you what, Paul Bryant, I've already went through my entire Billy Blanks tie boat workout videos. So I was wondering if you want to swap, if you let me borrow your Richard Simmons, and I'll let you borrow my Tybo Billy Blanks.
You ain't shit for that, man. Nah, man. What I was about to bring up too. Oh man, mine just went blank. I'll come back to it. All right, let me get to this next one from BusinessInsider.com. Gold's Gym is closing more than 30 locations for good as the coronavirus ravages the fitness industry. Here's the list. I'm not going to go through the list, but it's inevitable that some of these places, Planet Fitness, I heard, is in trouble too. So it doesn't surprise me. The next shoe to drop will probably be Crunch Fitness. You'll probably hear them drop as well.
Now, Gold's Gym, that's the franchise, right? Like the individual stores, or do they all corporate runs all of theirs?
I thought it was all corporate run. I don't know to be honest.
Okay.
But if they're saying that they're gonna close these locations, I mean, it looks like a gym to me. But yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend. He said the one near him was closing. They were transferring his membership to another gym.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to go to the calisthenics bars over the weekend here locally, and yeah, there's a lot of people out there. But I was in Cambridge last night, and they have closed off the calisthenics bars in their their playgrounds. They closed it off. So you want to go out and work, man, work out, man, you're gonna have some very limited resources.
Well, my question is, Gold's Gym in particular, they're being a little bit more preemptive, and shuttering some of their locations, but I'm not hearing the same sentiment from, say, LA Fitness and 24 Hour Fitness. I have memberships to both LA Fitness and 24 Hour Fitness, and I, about a month ago, I got, letters from them saying that they will be suspending, payments. For those that make monthly payments. And for me, like, I pay up front. So what they're doing is suspending, basically suspending my account. So like, I basically just pick up where I left off, because I paid LA Fitness for 3 years in advance. And I pay 24 Hour Fitness at the top of every year. But the issue is, once all of this kind of settles down and subsides, people who have invested in home gym equipment, such as myself, I've invested in home gym equipment because of this. How many people are going to return back to the gym now that they've gotten accustomed to, having equipment at home? Because this actually is pretty convenient for me, having equipment at home. Once I actually move, I'll probably have a dedicated room, because I've kind of just thrown this in my living room for right now. But like, once I actually move, I'll be probably having a dedicated room just for some workout equipment. So for a lot of people, it won't be necessary to go back to the gym anymore. For business models, like, say, for instance, Planet Fitness. There's another gym in Houston called Fitness Connection in Texas areas. Their model is basically they're over leveraged, which works great in an economy that's flush with capital. Because what they do is they basically leverage out their capital, and then they rely on monthly income from people who don't even really go to the gym, because they offer rates so low that people really don't even think about the fact that they're having that money withdrawn from their account monthly. So that's how they're able to offer those low rates, because most of the people that are actually, I won't say most, but like probably about 50% of the people that have memberships don't go consistently, yet they're still having money drafted from their accounts or from their credit cards on a monthly basis. That's how they're able to keep the revenue up. But now that they're suspending, payments and stuff like that, because they're not offering those gym services, how are they going to actually make payments on the actual financial leverage that they've done to open so many facilities so quickly? They have to preemptively shutter some of these, like Gold's Gym is taking the proper approach, but I'm interested to see what Planet Fitness and, like Fitness Connection, some of these upstarts, I won't say upstarts, they've been around for a little bit, but they've really been expanding rapidly. They should be preemptively closing locations as well.
Yeah, let's go to Mrs. Evolve, and she has her hand raised. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, thank you. I just had two questions. I came a little late, so I don't know, you probably were discussing this already. So the first question I had is of these businesses that we're hearing now, some of these large businesses that we hear going through some trouble. We hear, you guys mentioned a gym. There's some other places, Neiman Marcus, for example, has filed bankruptcy or whatever. The question I had to ask is this: how many of these businesses are Black businesses? In the sense that my question is, what are the businesses that are like our businesses that we can invest in protecting, as far as the of the Black folks that are still working, that can contribute to our economy. When I say our economy, I'm talking about the Black economy. And the second question I had is, of these businesses, like for instance, like the gyms, like, yes, and I hear you. I think a lot of people are just going to buy equipment and be home, because as far as the nature of this virus, it's just, I think too many people are concerned about our gyms just going to be clean enough to be able to be places people feel comfortable using the equipment. So are some of these businesses that have that we see having a lot of financial problems here, or they're forecasting that they're not going to be able to be doing too well? Maybe they see people already giving up memberships or making phone calls to end their memberships, whatever. But I guess my question is, how many of these businesses probably were like hanging by a string anyway?
Most of your retail was hanging by a string. Most of your retail
Okay.
was hanging by a string. But in terms of your first question for,
Yes.
do we know which Black businesses are impacted by this? All Black businesses are impacted by this, because all Black people cannot, who do have businesses in these areas, they're not immune to this at all. And if their constituency was Black people, Black and brown people, especially the churches are massively impacted by this. There is no real way to salvage Black businesses from an individual, even from a group level. This is institutional. This has to happen by the SBA and the federal government to come in and do something, which is why I've been saying, I was telling city council members this last year, there has to be a better way at investing into Black communities rather than spending it on playgrounds that cost $10 million. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to take hard-earned taxpayers' money in that neighborhood, spend it on a playground that Black people don't even utilize. It's really weird, some of the decisions that are being made in terms of fiscal responsibility. Your fiduciaries are not voted in, they're not elected, and so they spend the money the way they feel like spending it, and we have no control over that. And so that's why I said before, it's just an institutional issue.
Yeah, I was.
Thank you for
you know,
answering that question,
Mhm.
or those questions rather.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Complex.
Oh, I was just going to chime in on that. I think what a lot of this, what we're seeing here, and this has been kind of echoed on other stories that have kind of covered this coronavirus thing, that this whole pandemic thing, what it did was it exposed a lot of the holes and gaps in America's infrastructure.
Mhm.
So what happens as a result of this is fundamental changes. And what's been affected is business across the board. Like it kind of transcends like any specific group, really. Case in point, a good portion, or let's just say a higher portion of the stimulus loans for small businesses have been applied for by actually Chinese people, because their businesses amongst any other group in this country have been hit the hardest. Because people kind of get xenophobic with this type of shit. Next thing you know, they're like, oh, I'm not even going so much as go to a Chinese cleaner and have them wash my clothes. You see, so this has kind of hit us across the board, and really what it begs of is of how this country goes forward with business, how we do it. I sent Mike a article, like a story actually last night. I sent it to him in the Gone, about there's this chick who did a research study, and this was based off of a government study about the leading tech firms in this country coming together, basically kind of forming a think tank for the government to give tips and suggestions on how it is that we could actually ward off like the Chinese as it relates to the tech war, artificial intelligence, and all that type of stuff. You see, so what the report basically stated was that the United States would have to actually leverage an opportunity like coronavirus to basically pass mandates that would institute these leaps and bounds and regulations that would allow for the deployment of artificial intelligence and all of these different types of technologies. You see, so from a fundamental standpoint, there's even been government studies on this, that it was going to take this type of event to really kind of like change the industrial face of this country. So it's literally across the board. What Mike said, I don't think there's anything Black people could have done.
Yeah, well, to an extent, Black people could have, put their money into a Black bank or something like that. Maybe.
Well, that's a whole,
yeah. That might have manipulated them in some areas, but
yeah.
I was talking to my barber the other day. I was trying to sneak a cut in, and he said, "Hell no," because other barbers are getting arrested. Barbers and beauticians are getting arrested in the neighborhoods. So you having you're still doing business in close contact with with people without secure equipment. They're gonna come get you. They're gonna come crack down on you. So that's been going on. So in terms of how this is impacting Black people, they completely shut down most Black businesses. Most of the liquor stores are not even owned by Black people; they're owned by foreigners. So in that regard, I'm glad they're shut down anyways because I can't stand them. But for most Black people, their businesses are highly impacted by this. And at this point, I don't know if let me advance this person real quick.
Hey, Complex, can you send me that article? This is the.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So Mike, you ain't had a haircut since the coronavirus started?
And I know I had it the day before the lockdown. So that was the last time I had it. When I came back from Joburg, that's when I got it done. So I was good up until about the first of the month, and then now I'm looking like I need a mohawk.
Listen, look, Mike,
Harden, man, my James Harden.
Go ahead, reach in that kitchen cabinet and grab that cereal bowl.
Really?
And
oh, here we go. The Caesar.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I was thinking about just locking my hair anyway. So,
you know what though? You know what, Mike? See, here's the thing. I had started cutting my own hair, years ago. And I had some mess ups where I had to go to the barbershop, have them fix it and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I got to the point now. Obviously, it's been a while. That I'm good. The entire time through this, I done had a fresh cut. I've been cutting my hair like pretty much every week, sometimes twice a week. So you may want to invest in some clippers, and get to it.
Man.
Or you could do like me, man. I rock a fro, man. I just rock a straight up natural, man. So you ain't got to worry about it.
They used to have this device back in the 80s called the Flowbee. I think it was in the 90s, man.
Yeah, you hooked it up to like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, man, it'll cut your hair.
Yeah, I remember that shit.
It was mad racist though, because
it was, you couldn't cut no Black hair with that shit.
Nah, if your hair was kinky, man, it was out of the
Nah, the Flowbee was for the white man, man. That's what man is.
What up, man? Let me get to this article. Oh, actually, there's 7 people with their hand up. Let's go to Renaissance Man, then we'll go to the next article.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I already did the same thing, Mike. I bought some clippers that'll be here next week. So while we're on lockdown, I figure I'll get pretty good at it, and if I mess myself up, have to wear a hat if I go out. So
do rag on.
Yeah. But no, I was gonna say, going back to the gyms, what I have been hearing, what's interesting, you were talking about Gold's shutting down. There's some gyms, like I know in Atlanta, that are opening back up. And they're doing it like, we're open for an hour, we're closed for an hour to clean, we're open for an hour, closed for an hour to clean. So it'll be interesting how many take that approach versus how many just say, I'm done, because I'm sure there are going to be some lawsuits if people get sick coming out of this.
Well, it's funny because my gym right here, Mount Vernon Barbell, they're talking about bringing in like 7 to 10 people out at one time. They work out for a period, then they have to leave, and then they bring others in. So they're talking about doing that, but New York State has you shut down. So they're talking about, you're going to get some savage citations if you try to do this.
Yeah, non-essential trying to open up. Yeah, you're gonna get penalized.
No. You gonna get hammered hard, and they're just and they're just waiting. They're just waiting for somebody to do that. So, but then again, some businesses are desperate. So this is what they're trying to do. So that's what some people are talking about. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Atlanta, they open gyms back up today. Gyms, churches, restaurants next week. So
the second wave coming down is going to be savage. I just looked at it. I'm going over the 1918 pandemic. Man, it took out a lot of young folks. Took out a lot of people from 20 to 40, but it was savage. The second wave came down. It was horrific. These guys are asking for a second wave that they ain't gonna be prepared for.
Yeah, it was all the Georgia governor. Even Trump came out yesterday and said like, "Hey, I disagree with it," and he still said he's opening up. So,
well,
this second wave is gonna be horrifying.
They've had over 800 deaths in Georgia alone, and I'm scratching my head. You haven't done any testing.
Yep. Yeah, that's the other thing. He's opening without testing. That's the other thing. Like other states are talking about, a contingency plan, like, hey, we're gonna have testing and things like that. He just is opening up first one. So,
man, that's like going raw, man. But let me get you on the next article. This is from CNBC.com. Here are the largest public companies taking payroll loans meant for small businesses. Oh, here's the list right here. Hundreds of millions of dollars of paycheck protection program emergency funding have been claimed by large publicly traded companies. New research published by Morgan Stanley shows. In fact, the U.S. government has allocated at least $243.4 million of the total $349 billion to publicly traded companies, the firm said. The PPP was designed to help the nation's smallest mom and pop shops keep employees on payroll and prevent mass layoff across the country amid the coronavirus pandemic. But the research shows that several of the companies that have received aid have market values in excess of $100 million, including DMC Global, Wave Life Sciences, Fiesta Restaurant Group, which employs more than 10,000 people, according to its last reported annual number, received a PPP loan of $10 million, Morgan Stanley's data showed. At least 75 companies that have received the aid were publicly traded and received a combined $300 million in low interest taxpayer-backed loans, according to a separate report published by the Associated Press. I think you've seen some pretty shameful acts by some large companies to take advantage of the system, said Howard Schultz, former Starbucks chairman and CEO. Instead, the government should act as a backdrop for the banks to give every small business and every independent restaurant a bridge to the vaccine. And that is the money and the resources to make it through. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the thing is, these guys are thieves. These companies. Here's a list right here. But going back to Mrs. Evolving's question, these Black businesses that that are impacted by this, they're getting the crumbs from the PPP. So a lot of them that I've been driving around just this week alone, a lot of them have already boarded up their businesses. They're out of business. I think some of them have like no trespassing for sale and shit like that on their property. So I don't know.
From what I've seen, a lot of these guys don't even know about these things being available to them. I talked to one guy and he didn't hear about it. Why did you hear about this? Why don't you have
a stimulus loan?
Yeah,
Okay.
And why don't you know about this? You're a businessman. Actually, you should be watching all kinds of business news and watching the government, especially what the government do could affect you.
Well, I'm also going to say, and yeah, as you guys know, I'm a large proponent of truly owned Black banks that work well in your community. This is why you need to invest in them. This is why you need to have accounts with them. This is why, if you're a small business, why you need to work with them, because some of them will help you get through the situation, as opposed to others. Now, I know that average Negro can't understand this, or they'll say, "Get that white man who owned that bank behind you." You'll get those, you get those shine bones who will be talking that way. Right. But this is why you should support your Black banks, because this is what they're there for certainly during these periods. And as you enrich them, they will enrich you and help carry you through these more difficult situations that come up. This is not the only time something like this is going to come up.
You're a Black banker, you're a Black financial advisor.
I just want to say this too, family. You've got, a lot of these white institutions that do not have a vested interest in looking after your business. They're looking after their own community. They're not going to look after you. You have to understand that, and not that, hey, listen, those governmental institutions and so forth should be looking at you equally as well. Yes, but we know that they won't, to a large extent. So we have to look at that as well, because Black-owned banks do support, Black-owned business. I'm just going to leave it at that.
You're a Black-owned bank. You're a Black-owned financial advisor. You're a guy who you should have your advisor for everything, accounting and finance, should be calling you up and say, "Hey, this is available," because he's going to benefit from it. He's the one who's going to fill out the paperwork, send it into the government for you, because you can't unravel most of that paperwork. So
I gotta tell you,
guys who gotta call you and say, "Hey, look, Mr. So and so, you know what? There's this loan."
They're gonna alert you. You're right. They're gonna alert as well. It's just true.
I just wanted to say, to speak to what Dee just said. I was literally on the phone with the president of the Black bank that I have an account with today. You can talk to the bank president when you bank with a Black bank.
You can get. They're gonna point you to the right place, and if your business has been successful over time and you've made money with them, they're going to see to it that they're going to carry you through a slightly difficult period. They're going to do that. It's within their interest to do it.
Yep.
So you have to understand how that works. The average Black person who's sitting here, who's got their money over at Fargo or Chase or something else like that, you might want to start to rethink this. And I think this is how we have to start thinking now, coming out the box out of this, because we're going to have to very much invest for ourselves. All of these Black people talking about, white supremacy and blackity. If you're not putting your money where in the institutions and so forth, where your so-called community is, you're not serious, you're full of crap, and you're a scamster. Real people are investing with their banks, and this is only a small percentage of us who are doing it. And many more are going to have to seriously consider this, because as you see, a lot of these businesses that are sitting here right now that are invested with other situations, they're boarding up their doors, closing up, and these guys ain't thinking about you. They're not thinking about you.
Let's go to this.
And they're not concerned. And in some respects, it's not their business. I guess I don't agree with that, but they're looking out for their own. They're looking out for their own. Anyway.
Let's go to Mrs. Duval. She has a hand raised.
Oh, thank you very much. Negone, is that how you pronounce it? Negone 11? And
Negone.
And
or Brazilian Portuguese is Negão.
Anyway. Negone.
So,
okay.
Negão.
Well, because that's the reason why I had asked what I had asked before, because for me, I look at it from a standpoint. I mean, it may be obvious, but if you are, I mean, I guess this is one of those things where you live and learn. Experience like this has been teaching us a lot of things, and those who are aware and who want to do better, we pick up very quickly the cues where we, need to make our changes. And but the reason why I had asked what I asked earlier is because I realized that this whole idea, even with banking with a Black bank, a Black-owned bank, people are concerned about their people. They're also concerned about their people's interests. I'm not saying that there's not going to be some bank owners, black bank owners, that are going to be worried about the bottom dollar. You can't keep a business open without being worried about that, the bottom line or whatever. But, we do have to change our perspective on things. We have to see the benefit of focusing on a Black economy, because here's their gym has closed and we say, oh, Massa Gym has closed, or our gym has closed. No, it's not our gym, it's their gym. Their gym closed. Good, there's less gyms. And hopefully somebody like Diddy, or one of these guys that always talk about crazy things like buy a football teams, they'll buy the Gold's gym and it'll be Diddy's gym. When all this is over, Diddy will have a gym. And maybe what Diddy will do is he'll make sure, since Black people have been, pushed out there as being disproportionately affected by this virus, he'll make sure that it's in tip-top shape and it meets OSHA standards for cleanliness, and it's the cleanest gym franchise in the United States.
Mhm.
I mean, that's where we should be. We should be thinking about. I'm not saying, we have a lot of things to consider, but these are kind of things we should be focusing our energies towards, because when all of this, the dust settles, we can't just say, and I'm only saying this because I already see, this is not necessarily a part of this discussion, but I already see Black women being anxious, like anxiously waiting. Some have already figured out ways to do it, to do business with these Asians. As far as the nail salons and stuff, a lot of them are still getting their nails done, whether they're going through the back of these nail salons. A lot of the nail salons in Philadelphia really haven't closed. They're doing business. You can go through the back of the door. You just call and you make your appointment, and they let you in. And a lot of these Black women are just too happy on Instagram to kind of show. They'll hide the person's face because they know the business shouldn't be open, but they're too happy to share the information. And it's really disappointing to actually see how Black-owned, nail salons can't get the play from the sisters. The sisters they got to give that money to that Asian man.
Yo, listen, you
gonna open up a whole other can of worms here.
She drives a whole other can of worms, but I'm gonna step away from that. But her overall point that she's making about Black-owned business opportunities that are going to open up through this right now, you are so ridiculously dead on the money. It's not even funny. And that's what we've been talking about with people. There's opportunity here. You can take advantage of a lot of this. Black people have to come at this thinking a little bit different. Your points that you just brought up here right now, my dear, are very well taken. We've been talking about this kind of stuff like this for a while. I've certainly been talking about it for a good while as well. But you're dead on it. That's points very well taken.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Super Triz. He has his hand raised.
Yes, thanks, Mike. To the young lady that was just talking, you start calling out the sisters. You're gonna put a target on your back, just so you know. But anyways,
let it do it because it needs to be done.
Hey, I'm just forewarning her. But to your point, Nagona, as well as complex design, you guys had mentioned, Black banks, and obviously, the Black Brain Trust does not offer financial advice. But for entertainment purposes, would it be appropriate to actually link the websites of the banks that you guys bank with in the live chat?
Yeah, there's only 5 Black banks, I think, to date. One United is probably the biggest Black bank in the country. I use One United. The headquarters is not far away from me. So,
Triz, I'll put. Let me get in a few minutes. I'll get back to the house. And I'll post it.
Yeah, and I'll do it www.carver.com, Carver Bank.
Citizens Trust in Atlanta.
Can you type that? Can you type that in the chat, Nagone 11?
Yeah, I'm not in a situation where I can do that.
I can't do the Portuguese pronunciation. I can do the Thai City pronunciation. Thai City likes to call you Nagoon for some reason.
No, Nagoon means a big black strong mother. That's actually big black mother. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, let me get to this next article. We got about a dozen more to go. CNBC.com again. U.S. issues new guidance for small business loans, pressure public companies to return funds. The Small Business Administration issued new guidance on Thursday, making it less likely that big publicly traded companies can access the next round of funding for the U.S. government's Small Business Relief Program. It is also It also stepped up pressure on public companies that have tapped funds to return the money. The update comes after a public furor that large companies tapped the facility known as the Paycheck Protection Program for hundreds of millions of dollars in loans, while thousands of small businesses have yet to receive funding. Companies applying for the coronavirus relief funds must certify that the loans are necessary and that they cannot tap other sources of money, the SBA said. By definition, public companies have access to the capital markets. For instance, Shake Shack said it returned the $10 million they got through the PPP after it sold $150 million in new shares. Borrowers still must certify in good faith that their PPP loan request is necessary, the SBA said. It is likely that a public company with substantial market value and access to capital markets will be able to make the required certification in good faith. And such a company should be prepared to demonstrate to the SBA upon request the basis for its certification. The change comes as a second round of funding for the PPP after initial $350 billion was depleted last week, is set to be approved by lawmakers later Thursday. The program is set to get $310 billion in fresh funds, and industry executives have said that even this amount will likely last only days. There is no guarantee that lawmakers will approve more money for the program after that. This is interesting because, they pump up the market. The Fed pumps up the market with $1 trillion per day, and yet they say they don't have enough money, to fund these businesses. I find it to be very interesting, especially because of the fact that these publicly traded companies were able to skim from the top. Most of your Black businesses would never, even if they knew, the people who run their own businesses, even if they knew that this was, the PPP was in place and the stimulus was in place, they wouldn't have had access to it either. Your Wall Street companies had already taken advantage of it and left them nothing. Let me get to this next one from New York Times.com. Who is driving inequality? You are. Who is driving inequality in America? You are. I am. We are. Did you read to your kids before bed when they were young? If you did, you gave them an advantage over kids whose parents were working the evening shift at 7-Eleven. Did you spend extra on tutoring and music lessons? Since 1966, affluent families have spent almost 300% more educating their young, while everybody else spending has been mostly flat. Did you marry before having kids and raise your kids in a two-parent home? The children of the well-educated are now much more likely to grow up in stable families, and those differences in family structure explain 32% of the growth of family income inequality since 1979. What does it do there? If you did these things, you did nothing wrong. You invested in your children's flourishing as any decent parent would. But here's the situation. The information economy rains money on highly trained professionals, doctors, lawyers, corporate managers, engineers, and so on. Daniel Markovitz, author of The Meritocracy Trap, estimates there are about 1 million of these workers in America today. They work really hard, are really productive, and earn a lot more. In the mid 1960s, profits per partner at elite law firms were less than 5 times a secretary's salary. Now, Markovitz notes they are over 40 times. I'm not going to read this whole thing. These professionals invest heavily in their children's education. By 8th grade, students from affluent families are 4 grade levels ahead of students from poor families. 72% of students at the 150 most competitive colleges come from the richest quarter of families, and only 3% come from the poorest. Inherited inequality is bad enough. but it's the geographic concentration that is really turning America into a caste society. Affluent people used to be spread around, owning the local bank or factory, sending their kids to the local schools. Now, sorry. Now, those of us in the top 20% of earners are concentrated in the talent-rich zones around New York, DC, the Bay Area, etc. The already advantaged build rich communities and multiply one another's advantages even more. It takes a village to raise a Stanford grad. You don't have to drive very far outside the top 20% of the community to find yourself in a different universe. In February, I drove from Manhattan Beach, California to Watts in South Central LA in Compton, where I spent a few days interviewing residents. People in Compton and Watts, almost exclusively Latino and Black, talked about all the things that have been stripped away from their communities: good schools, public amenities, school choirs, music festivals. Fear was a constant subject of conversation. Most of the people I spoke with had a lost family member to gun violence. People spoke about intense levels of social distrust. The locals had been betrayed again and again by outsiders and are now very skeptical of people promising to make improvements. They talked about trauma. There are Compton riots on the inside now, one resident told me. I chose to go to Compton and Watts for a specific reason, which offers a way forward. Harvard economist Raj Chetty recently led a study that showed that though these two neighborhoods are demographically similar and only 2.3 miles apart, 44% of the Black men who grew up in Watts were incarcerated on April 1st, 2010, compared with only 6.2% of Black men who grew up in families with similar incomes in Central Compton. Similarly, social mobility was much lower in Watts than in Compton. Why are some neighborhoods, including some in Compton, able to give their kids better chances in life despite so many disadvantages? Chetty points to several factors: better schools, more fathers present in the neighborhoods, and more cohesive community organizations. I found all of those things in my reporting in Compton and something else. Watts is a part of Los Angeles. Compton is its own city with its own mayor. I met a lot of great people in Watts, but Compton has more civic infrastructure, community groups, and locally controlled government agencies. Compton has a lot of homegrown civic reformers like Rayford Owens, who is a deputy Los Angeles County Sheriff and pastor at a Baptist church. There's also a mentality. We have faith in our ability to take care of ourselves. Only people in the neighborhood really know what's going on. Some people who talk about inequality focus on the top 1%. And if you want to go after the hedge fund billionaires, feel free. But as inequality is actually lived out, it's the 2080 gap that is most glaring and most unjust. But we can reduce the opportunity gap if we follow the lessons of Compton. First, the neighborhood is the unit of change. Social mobility rises village by village. Second, the people in the community have to be in charge. They need resources from outside, but only local control does the trick. Third, spending money on preschool, apprenticeship, and other human capital programs really works. The top 20% is not going to stop spending heavily on their kids. We have to give the bottom 80% the resources to do the same. I have no qualms about this op-ed from David Brooks, who is a longtime person, who is a longtime member of PBS and other public broadcasting stations.
He's actually a conservative too.
Yeah, but he's not a Black conservative though.
Yeah, he's not.
I know, right? That's funny.
Good observation.
I don't hear him talking like this. The ones we have in our chats, are usually more or less arguing against UBI instead of
Sheriff Clark type of conservative.
Oh yeah, with his hat on his head, 10 gallons.
Yeah. He was dead on about like the differences between like Compton and Watts. I thought that was a pretty keen observation. One is like a community within LA, and then the other is an actual city, right? That kind of has its own civic infrastructure. And as a result, you see the difference, right? Watts is still kind of like Watts for whatever reason in 2020, even though there really should be no excuse for Watts being Watts still, it kind of still is. And Compton, you know, it's long evolved since the days of NWA and shit like that. You know what I mean? It's Compton's got it's a different thing going on over there, and it's the differences are stark between one area where pretty much the community was autonomous in terms of like self-organization and revitalization versus Watts, which is just basically a ward of the city of LA. And you know, you go there to, you know, the city council people with your hands out saying, you know, you need to do more for this community, you need to do more for this, you need to do more for that, right? Versus the Compton model. So it's pretty I mean, I can being out here, man, I could tell you firsthand, he's absolutely right.
You know, I look at Watts and I remember the riots back you know, back in the 60s and the whole deal, the 70s, but the Watts riots that went on. And I remember a great movie that had come out when I was a kid called Watts Stacks. And it talked about, you know, Stacks records and what happened in the Watts riots area. And then I started to really look deeper into it and saw, you know, that the riot in Watts was one of the largest riots we had anywhere in American history.
Yep.
And that area, for all practical purposes, after that was fundamentally redlined. It was.
Yeah, those buildings, Nagon, I would say there's still some buildings there right now that are still vacant from that time.
Yeah, exactly. And President Johnson sat back and said, holy shit, after all I've done for these Black people, look what they doing. Didn't quite understand the dynamics of what was going on in Watts. Was a community that had, you know, at that time, a lot of, you know, Black, fairly conscious people who were really about revolutionary change, if you will. And those folks went ham. They went ham. And ever since then, those times, from the time I was a little kid, damn near 50 years ago, that area has been the same. It's been fundamentally redlined and sanctioned for that reason specifically. And they don't want that rising up like that again. And I'll just leave it at that.
No, I mean, we've talked about this many times before of how you advance the Black community forward. I mean, with self-proclaimed technocrats, that's exactly how you would city or at least your neighborhoods forward, is because you have to have some kind of control, which is what I brought up earlier. When I talked to city council, why are you spending so much money on playgrounds and basketball courts? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, those pork barrels, people. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But they get used maybe an hour out, and nobody knows. You know, the water fountains are not being, you know, don't work because they haven't been serviced. And you have to ask yourself, how is this possible? You have unelected people we would consider our own deep state that have a vested interest in keeping things broken. And you know, David Brooks is right. If you don't have control of your own resources, you're never going to be able to get out of this. And that's where Mrs. Evolving comes in. She has her hand raised.
You know, I used to work for a company. It was a very short time. It was too many white women, and they were like, you know, super feminist. But it was for a company where their goal was a board gave them an endowment. I mean, these are just straight up millionaires to just paying into a society of genteel women, white women back like 100 some odd years ago. But they still had the program going on, and this board still continues to pour millions of dollars into this program to take care of women that live in Germantown. Now, Germantown is primarily, it's turning white again, but it's primarily Black women they're servicing in this section of Philadelphia. But the reason I brought them up is because one time I had to attend a meeting, and the meeting that I attended for them was, there was an organization called the Villagers. And the villagers are a group of older white people. And I mean, they brag that their diversity. When they talk about the diversity of their organization, they talk about things like LGBT and chronic diseases. I mean, that's how little diversity they have, right? So predominantly, white older folks. And it was funny because when I attended their meetings, they always were talking about political stuff. I mean, when I say it's to a point where they are so well organized, if you have a chance, you can look it up. Like I said, it's called The Villagers. But they pride themselves on being these like older, these hippies that got older and they don't want to be, as what they call, they don't want to be enslaved in nursing homes. They want to be liberated. They call themselves abolitionists or whatever, right? So anyway, the point that I'm making is they're so well organized. They literally collect money on a monthly. They have like, depending on how many people in the household want to participate in it, they have a family fee, they have annual fees and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things I was so taken back by, of course, I was the only Black person in the building that day. I was so taken back by their focus on, like, they showed a commercial. Well, yeah, it was a commercial, but it was, they showed a commercial, then they also showed like a news report, like how, they were being picked up, like, their stories are being picked up and how they had like, politicians and like, the point that I'm really making is they were so well organized. These older folks was pretty much letting these politicians know, like, no, we want to make sure that whatever you about to do for our neighborhoods, all these surrounding neighborhoods that's a part of these quote unquote, the villagers, it better be to our interests. And when I thought about it, I'm like, and let me, one key thing. So this was around like Thanksgiving and they were putting together a can drive. Now, in contrast, remember I said that this organization is focused on taking care of like older white women first at the beginning, but now it's older Black women. These older Black folks that they take care of, they do have an extension of their program that does include men too. So it winds up being older Black men and women, right? But they, these people during the holiday time, they were picking up the cans from the can drive. So these older white people who are the same exact age as them, they're keeping they got their money set aside, these monthly fees, these annual fees, well organized, and doing the can drive. And them same damn cans that those white folks was putting together, them same damn them same cans was the cans that these older Black folks, we were going to eventually have to organize and put together to get to these older Black folks. And when I looked at that, it was just like, you know what?
Is it me or is Mrs. Evolving breaking up for everybody else?
No, I can hear her.
Yeah, I think it might be me. All right.
So for me, I'm just thinking to myself, like, maybe we're going to have to lay off. I know we want to flash. I know we want to be fly, but maybe we're just going to have to lay off of the Louis Vuitton. Maybe some of these things, the red bottoms, maybe it's just not for our generation. Maybe just one red bottom is just going to be enough, because
maybe
I'm just saying those things don't mean anything to me. But for some people, I literally look like Christmas time. Like you will see them just like going crazy. I mean, like just literally buying all kinds of foolishness. And everything's for the gram now. So it's like, okay, well, this is what we continue to put our money towards. Like we don't have things like, when's the last time you heard a Black organization saying that they're putting aside money so they can save the community playground? Like, so they can save it. Not that the city gonna save it, they gonna save it.
Well, I mean, we've actually been pushing, I mean, Mike was just stating this just a few minutes earlier. The assumption here is that, people are going to make money for playgrounds, right? They're going to make that money they're going to make that money available for playgrounds because, you have city contractors that get paid to go and put them out there, right? And typically those contractors aren't Black. So, the playgrounds are going to be there. I think what we're looking at, though, is putting money into things that we'll ultimately see a return on. Now, we don't really see returns on playgrounds, really, unless somebody ends up getting to the NBA at one point and then they come back and, I don't know, sponsor the playground where they grew up playing basketball. But if we're talking about that same concept, but we're putting it into fab labs and maker labs, right? Which then matriculate those kids into more comprehensive STEM programs, which then lead them into an incubator type of environment. Now we're talking about seeing some ROI. Okay, but that's not the approach that we take. Much like how you were just saying, maybe we should lay off of the red bottoms in the Louis Vuitton for a while. And I was like, yeah, you think?
Nothing but Altos.
Because we could actually we could stand to benefit from redirecting, right, capital that
well,
we're
these
largely,
programs exactly a complex exactly. You say most of these programs, we see them put money into a park or something else like that. It's just pork barrel crap for them talking about they're putting money into your community. I'm serious about it. A lot of these guys, they put a little money in. City makes a little money in contract. And a few other little contractor friends come in, they build a little something over there. There's some kickbacks on that. People make some cash, and they move forward on that, and that's it. They put up a park. They're not seriously invested in improving your kids' education because there's enough money where they can put a park in there and then also develop some in-house tutoring schooling programs to actually get kids more onto STEM and these other programs to help to develop you. But that's not where the emphasis is. A lot of guys, a lot of cities, they're not putting emphasis into that.
But is that their job?
And that's a problem that we have.
But is that their job?
Is that their job? Well, no, it's our job to put emphasis on that because you have your city council people, you have like your congressmen, just like in Cummings district, people got on him because those guys sat around, had a lot of pork barrel crap, and they did not take care of their own communities. They didn't do it. A lot of money came in, and these guys flittered it and did a lot of bull crap with that bread. Didn't trickle down to the bottom line. Didn't trickle down to the people the way it was supposed to. That's on us. A lot of that is on us. Many of our educational issues that we do have, and we've called it out here in the Brain Trust, is on us. We can talk about Mayor Fenty and Dr. Michelle Rhee and them talking about schools that will pay for performance to get your education better. And these, I called them these chicken and biscuit eating freaking teachers sitting up in there, who just want to sit back and and hang back and get retirement or whatever. Didn't give a damn about the kids' education. They're up in front of their classes, splitting verbs and everything else like that. But yet, just keep, I want to make sure I get my pension, and they didn't give a damn about the kids' education. A lot of that was on us. And then they got rid of Mayor Fenty, got rid of Michelle Rhee, and the system hasn't improved.
Yeah, you had a lot of parents who pushed back against them.
We're responsible for some of that. So yeah, I'm not sitting here blaming the man for all that. We have to take responsibility for a lot of what goes on in our community. That's why I don't accept a lot of crap when I hear a lot of these fronters and bullshitters and all these, these black power folks and these black community people and all this crap. They ain't about no bottom line here. Not about it.
I'm gonna say something now that probably upset a lot of people. My kids went to a school here in Florida that at the beginning of every semester I used to have to buy napkins and all that and send it to the school. And 3/4, let's say the school was 60% black and 40% other, mostly from South America and so forth. The black kids came to school in the most expensive clothes, but they didn't bring books. They didn't bring everything that I bought for my kids. They didn't bring. So it's the parents. And most of the parents that I see when I go pick up my kids in school are women. And they were dressed down. So I used to get upset when I saw that, but now I don't get upset anymore. I just let it go. I don't pay any attention. So I agree with the sister. Yeah, these people don't want to give up their nails and they're here for nothing.
Yeah, the thing is that the cities and states get funding based on the level of poverty that's available. So as long as they can keep Black people in a dire state, they get funding for it, which is why you see this flood of Latinos coming into these communities, because they need to bring in as many poor people as possible to justify the federal funding and federal dollars that needs to come in, and the state dollars that needs to come into this in order to
That's exactly correct. And it's called poverty pimping, the poverty pimps.
Yeah.
Poverty, I call them pimps. And that's what you got a lot of going on. That's been going on since the 60s, since the Great Society program that that you had coming out of the Johnson administration. And it's been pork barreled around for the last 50 years. And that's a big part of the problem. And really a lot of that is on us to change that. A lot of that's on us. I'll just leave it at that. A lot of it is on us.
You don't really have control over that, which is what the article is saying from David Brooks, from the op-ed from David Brooks is saying you don't really have a whole lot of control over it. And so that's what I was saying before, that the fiduciary person who's unelected is the one who decides where his money goes. These people stay in office for 30, 40 years at a time. And so this becomes a bigger problem in Black neighborhoods, because Black neighborhoods are not run typically, are basically subordinate to the larger institutions. They don't actually have control over what's being delegated or not. And so,
well, we talk about community control. Okay, you can control some of your boards. You can start controlling some of your school boards. You can literally get in there and start controlling your council, your town councils. You can get people to be putting on your planning boards and so forth. That can be run. I'm in the city right now.
But if you don't own property, Nagone, that becomes a problem, because you can be easily gentrified out of those neighborhoods.
You can be if you don't own it. If you certainly don't own a lot of stuff.
And the majority of Black people don't own property. That's a part of the problem. So they don't have any stake in that anymore. It's a larger issue. It's not just
it's definitely a larger issue, but you certainly can impact it, and I certainly know that you definitely can. And playing local politics on a local political level can play a big role in that. Yes, there's a big issue with respect to owning land and controlling land, but you have a lot of land and stuff that that the city can actually turn over to you if you have certain kind of programs you can put together to actually help you to actually turn over that land and make it profitable. You can do that. There are programs that can be done. I know about the Alice Cornegay housing program that she had back in the at the end of the 60s into the 70s, where they had undeveloped property. I mean, land that just property in the cities, where in the South Bronx and certain other areas that were just, oh man, it were ghost towns, man. Ghost towns. Shit was terrible. And, she put together a program that said, listen, the tenants can come in here and own this and we can control it. And that's where you have these housing cooperatives right now. And they were able to turn that around. You do have a lot more power than you might think. So I hear what you're saying, but of course I don't fully buy into that.
Let's go to Renaissance, man.
No, I was going to add, sort of piggyback on what Nagone was saying. And some of these places, depending on geographical location, you can actually basically secede and create your own township. That was a big thing. It failed, but I'm sure they're going to try it again down in there's a town south of Atlanta. I think it was called Stockbridge. They basically wanted to take the town and basically cut it in half, and there's a big fallout from it. But towns have done it. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, but that makes sense when you own property. If you don't own property, you don't measure up in these areas. That's
Mike is correct about owning the property. What I'm saying is you can get a hold of some of these properties. You can get a hold of them. You actually can. You don't need that much money. And if you come up with certain kinds of programs that is federal dollars that can help you to develop that, you can do this. There are ways to play this game. A lot of us just don't know about it. A lot of us are not interested in doing it because certain pockets get greased over others. So there's certain kind of things that go on. But you certainly can do it. Me, myself, and MOT, we talk about all the time about buying a county. There are counties out here that you can buy that's counties.
Whole
right now,
county.
For less than whole counties for less than 300
whole
grand.
city. Yep.
Right now, right here, right now, today, like I said, today, that you could get into and start to buy into it. This is what's going on here right now. Now, I'm saying where we are primarily, we can do a lot more in setting things up than we are. And we have to be politically organized and really develop for that. And that's a big part of the big work that we have. We're not, the level of organization that we have at the levels that we should be organized at are not there. We were on a point we were doing that. A lot of that got cut back to the fat meat for many different reasons. Corruption played a big role in it. A lot of guys sold out and so forth. We can talk about that all night long, but there's a lot of stuff that we could actually do that are in our hands. You know, we can take over some of these lands. Mike is right. You got to own the properties. You got to own a lot of properties. There are a lot of properties around in cities and communities that we actually are in that are run down, that they're just waiting to be gentrified. And you don't have to wait for that to be gentrified. You can actually turn a lot of that around, but the political leadership and the knowledge base is not there in these communities. And that's why a lot of this is going on. But I'll
Nagone, there's
leave it at that right now. Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Nagone, there's just an assumption that, you know, white people are only people that can be gentrifiers.
No. We can be. I see going on home right now. We can be gentrifiers.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I think it's a mindset type of thing. You know, I remember I got a little bit of pushback in saying that, you know, if push came to shove, right, and it was either going to be me or you know, a non-black person who's going to go into a black community to buy an apartment building, for example. I got pushback because I said, okay, well, look, let me tell you something. Either way, both of us are going to be looking to do some form of gentrification because we're basically talking about business. If I go in and I buy a property, I need it to make an ROI for me. I need for it to cover the liabilities that I've put out in order to acquire it. Right? Now, the difference though is this. I don't necessarily have an interest in getting rid of black folks in the black community where I purchased the building versus someone else who probably does. Right? But the one common thing that both of us have is an ROI. So I'm saying that we could adopt the same mindset because when those people go in the white communities and buy buildings, are they looking to put them out and replace them with black people? No. So I'm saying we could have that mindset, that approach in much the same way. Like we look at gentrification and property acquisition in much of a one-way street sort of way where it's others acquiring the property and then moving your ass out, and then you're left with no recompense, right? But we never think about what about us being the people who acquire the property. You get what I mean?
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I speak of trajectory, because for me, when I bought a property in Seattle. I'm not from Seattle. I'm not from that neighborhood where I bought the property. I don't have any, foundation there. I approached it from a business standpoint. There's people there that are in the property now. I'm consistently looking at ways to raise rent right now because of the moratorium. I've kind of, fallen back from that. But once this moratorium is lifted and things are back to some semblance of normality, I'm back to business, raising rent and looking to renovate and swap over tenants. It's nothing personal. I'm not looking for a specific ethnic group per se, but I am looking for, as complex design, you said, a return on my investment, the liabilities that I've taken in order to acquire this property. I need to see an actual return on investment. I want to make more money than the liabilities that I put out there. So from that perspective, a lot of people can't understand that because they never look at things from the position of ownership. They're renters and they're looking to take advantage of situations like right now, people are not paying rent, and not understanding, that at some point, if you're ever an owner, and this is why people don't have trajectory, they never look at themselves ever plan on being an owner. This is the reason why they don't care about certain things that people who are actually in an ownership position or plan to be in an ownership position actually care about. The interests don't align.
But that's the whole
Trish,
thing. That's the whole thing we're talking about as far as cooperative ownership. The Alice Cornegate housing development in the Bronx was all about the tenants owning their own properties and owning it from a cooperative perspective. Works. It works. It's big. It works. In fact, when that kicked off, that was one of the reasons why the Bronx, the South Bronx, and the whole Bronx area started to become revitalized. All right. And that's a key there. So ownership doesn't have to be, well, man, I got to get up, my 50 or 100 grand to get caught up there, because most of you ain't gonna come up with that kind of bread. All right. So the reality is, how do you become a homeowner? How do you become an apartment owner or whatever? Start getting into that process without having to come up with that. There are ways to do this that could work very well in our community. And we have to just adopt more of it. And this stuff is not new. This has been around for a while. But what I'm saying is, you got so many layers of extraordinary bullshitters that are coming into your community and talking out the sides of their ass and don't move towards it because they're not serious about that. They're serious about lining their own pocket, getting what they can get, and moving forward. And that's a big part of our issue. Anyway, you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm reading a comment in chat. Apparently, I'm justifying coincidental racism through economic inequality.
I got to move on to the next article.
Okay. All right. I don't understand that one. The link is in the chat, bro. If you want to come up and explain that one, please.
All right, next item on the docket from WashingtonPost.com. Trump administration considers leveraging emergency coronavirus loan to force postal service changes. The Treasury Department is considering taking unprecedented control over key operations of the U.S. Postal Service by imposing tough terms on an emergency coronavirus loan from Congress, which would fulfill President Trump's longtime goal of changing how the service does business. According to two people familiar with the matter, officials working under Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, who must approve the $10 million loan, have told senior officials at the USPS in recent weeks that he could use the loan as leverage to give the administration influence over how much the agency charges for delivering packages and how it manages its finances, according to the two people who spoke on the condition of anonymity because the talks are preliminary. Trump has railed for years against what he sees as mismanagement at the Postal Service, which he argues has been exploited by e-commerce sites such as Amazon, and has sought to change how much the agency charges for delivery of packages. Under the $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus relief passed last month, the Treasury was authorized to loan $10 billion to the USPS, which says it may not be able to make payroll and continue mail service uninterrupted past September. Mnuchin rejected a bipartisan Senate proposal to give the Postal Service a bailout amid the negotiations over that legislation. A senior Trump administration official and congressional official previously told the Post. The borrowing terms have only been discussed among both agencies' leadership and have not been made public because the Postal Service hasn't officially requested the loan. The two people familiar with the matter said Mnuchin could still decide not to pursue the tough terms as September deadline nears. The Postal Service would not have to use the entire $10 billion loan at one time, but could borrow up to that amount at any given time. Interesting. So I don't know. I haven't gone to the post office probably since 2018. Probably since early 2018. I haven't been in there since then. I don't know what they do in that post office anymore.
Yeah, I've been to my post office, Scarsdale post office. I got to get a new passport, so I go through that as well. But at the end of the day, the government, or let's just say this, they've been trying to get rid of the Postal Service and privatize this thing for years. They've been trying to do it. And the question is, do you want to have DHL or any one of these other services out here, FedEx or whatever, handling your mail, a private company handling your business, which I find ridiculous. But once again, this is, they're trying to privatize it and put this in the hands of the corporate sector, of which I find
trying to put it in the hands of Amazon.
And Amazon or whatever. I'm very much against it. This is a big push. They're talking about they don't have the money for this, but yet they got billions and trillions of bailout banks and all other kind of crap. Bullshit. So just watch what these guys are saying very close. Don't trust it. I don't want private corporations handling my mail, because if they do, what are they going to be doing with it? How are they going to be looking into it? Nah, man, forget about that. No. I want a governmental agency that I can hold exceedingly responsible for what's going on, as opposed to
the post office isn't a government agency, though, right?
Say that again.
Post office isn't government. Isn't completely government, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. U.S. United States Postal Service is sponsored and subsidized by your government. Certainly is. So
yeah, that's a government job.
Yeah. So you best look at that and be very wary of privatizing agencies like this to the corporations. There's a big move that's going on here in this country, which is frightening.
But I don't know if they can actually sustain themselves, because then, their mail is down 80%.
The mail what?
Mail is down 80%. It's not like, because all your bills and stuff are paid online.
Well, a lot of stuff is, but I tell you what, I certainly get a lot of mail coming through here.
Yeah, but I mean, for now, you individually, but overall, the post office is seeing 80% decline in mail. And not really.
Well, let's just say you might want to scale down your staff. You might want to scale the staff down a little bit. Okay, you might want to cut your overhead a tad. Keep your overhead low, savings high, however you want to play it. Cut the overhead. They're business ways to do this.
Well, I mean, to your point, Nagone, I still use the post office for certain things. I still get a ton of mail. And I have
mail truck when it comes up my street. He's stopping at every house. He's stopping at every house. All right.
Yeah,
so it's like
one thing, but to deliver mail, I don't know. It seems like it's been down according to the post office themselves.
Well, the mail itself has been down. Yeah, but you have the advent of Amazon Prime, right? Next day shipping and all this kind of stuff. So like on top of the pre-existing postal service infrastructure, you have Amazon and their aims and their objectives to try to get packages to people as quickly as possible, right? See, so the overlay on top of that is like somebody like an Amazon is going to want the infrastructure of a post office. That's why ultimately I can't really see the post office going anywhere. If anything, I can see Amazon subsidizing the U.S. Postal Service to the point where they essentially own it. It's just called the U.S. Postal Service.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to. That go ahead, Tris. We cut you off.
Well, I was just saying, like, when I go into the post office, a lot of times I see, like, there's staff members there that I feel like a lot of the services that some of the staff members provide can actually be automated. Like people coming in there to deliver packages. A lot of them, no offense, but I see some elderly people up in there, and maybe they're computer illiterate and they don't want to use like some of the stuff. Like sometimes I go in there, like if certain things, I just use the automated system. There's like this thing where a kiosk where you can just get the mail your package and stuff like that. I use that, as opposed to waiting in the lines to see people for things that I can do with the kiosk, and so that's my thing.
Yeah, to me, I think you can certainly cut the overhead. Somebody in the chat said, yeah, we got billions to send people to foreign aid, but we don't have enough money to keep our postal service going. Exactly. Like I said, I'm not buying any of this crap that these guys are talking about as far as that's concerned. I buy none of it. They just want to privatize your mail like they want to private. We've seen the privatization of the medical industry is not working. Yeah. Scam. We see what that's all about, especially in the pandemic like this. We see it's some bullshit. It don't work. Yeah. So we're seeing that. We will see that with with the mail service itself, no, I want that to be a federally protected mail service. You have a police force, everything else that's around that's deputized to handle all this stuff, and I want that level of protection around my mail. I don't want no damn private fucking corporation handling this bullshit. No way. Just we've seen the private jailing system when the jails have gone private. We've seen what's happened with that, and we've seen what's primarily happened with us behind it. Privatization to a large extent in this country for certain kinds of areas is pure evil, and we need to be very skeptical of it and reject it out of hand as far as I'm concerned. Now, y'all have your own views. Go ahead. I'm out.
Yeah, let's go to Renaissance Man.
I was just going to quickly add to if you start talking about privatizing the postal service, sort of the underlying thing is that it could hurt a lot of black people, a lot of black men in particular, because I've known a lot of brothers who have worked in the post office in some form or fashion. And like I said, it's a government job right now, but becomes private, might have a reason to sort of keep some black folks out.
Oh, I think that's an excellent point. I should have brought that up, but yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. That's very good. That's very, very true there. Right, very accurate.
Let's go to Renaissance Woman. Sorry, Renaissance Woman.
Renaissance Woman, that's cute. But I'm old school, and I was raised by old folks. Okay, my parents were old when they had all of us. And I have an online business, and I personally appreciate going to the post office. I have my little PO box there, and I go there like an old lady, and I check if there's anything there for me, and I like delivering my package. Anything that my customers order. I like going to the post office and physically putting it in there. I don't even like putting the mail in the mailbox. I like going to the post office and putting it in there inside the post office. I'm very old school, so I hope that service doesn't go away. But these were all good points. I think it was Renaissance Man or Nagon who made those points. Was it Renaissance Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent points. Thank you.
And it was me, of course. Of course, I'm gonna be bringing up some excellent points.
Excellent points as well.
All right. Let me get to the next item on the docket from CNBC.com. Tech companies pull back on hiring, flashing another grim warning sign for the U.S. economy. Tech companies have pulled back sharply on hiring, adding to the cascade of negative economic shocks caused by the coronavirus outbreak. It's been roughly 1 month since the country's first stay-at-home order came down in San Francisco Bay Area. In the weeks since then, shutdowns to control the pandemic spread have unleashed havoc on industries ranging from retail to travel and tourism. The pace and scale of the economic damage has been striking. An additional 4.4 million Americans filed for jobless claims last week, bringing the total to 26 million over the past 5 weeks, and some economists are predicting the U.S. unemployment rate could soon eclipse 30%, up from a 50-year low of 3.5% in February. On the other side of the ledger, hiring trends are painting an equally distressing picture. And despite the shift to remote work and the surge in demand for certain online services, tech is not immune to the pullback. Job openings nationwide across the industry dropped more than 20% between mid-March and mid-April, according to analysts at Glassdoor. A lot of attention has focused on the impact of service workers, Daniel Zhao, senior economist at Glassdoor, said. But the fact of the matter is that there isn't any industry that is immune to the effects of the outbreak, and the tech industry has to figure out how to adapt like every other industry. The drawdowns have been especially acute in the Bay Area and in the subsector of internet and technology, including companies like Pinterest and Yelp. These platforms have reported significant bumps in user engagement, but they have been offset by sharp slowdown in advertiser spending. But postings for computer software, hardware, and IT jobs have all dropped double digits between mid-March and mid-April. Between the rise in online grocery shopping, heightened focus on cloud computing, and seemingly insatiable demand for video conferencing tools, some tech companies have benefited as more people turn to their services while sheltering indoors. Overall, though, it's been difficult to find many companies ramping up hiring efforts. According to data supplied by CNBC Think Alternative Data, a research group that tracks job listings posted online by both public and private companies. Those figures are aggregated from companies recruiting, HR, and career websites. The range of businesses slowing hiring levels, the death of the coronavirus induced shock to demand. Between January 1st and April 15th, traditional, well-established hardware companies like Analog Devices, Dell Technologies, Intel, and Micron have all cut postings between 30 and 60%. Over that same time frame last year, the companies either increased listings or held fairly steady. Like all businesses right now, we're scrutinizing all hiring and keeping a focus on preserving team member jobs. A spokesperson for Dell told CNBC, "We are honoring all offers that have been extended and remain committed to our early in-career talent programs like summer internships. Even industries seemingly poised to benefit amid strict social distancing measures have seen wide pullbacks in job postings. Cybersecurity infrastructure seems as important as ever with more and more people working from home, but those companies aren't necessarily ramping up hiring." This is very true. Of the top 10 most valuable public cybersecurity companies tracked by Thinkum, 6 have reduced the number of job postings since the start of the year. 2 of those firms have held steady, while just 2 have added to their job boards. FinTech have seen some of the starkest divergences in hiring trends. Some firms have benefited from the shift to digital and contactless payments like PayPal. The company nearly doubled the number of job postings between January 1st and April 15th during the same period last year. So yeah, this was bound to happen. If you don't have people going into the office, not really a whole lot of justification now to really hire anybody, because you have no idea what's going to happen. Plus, you can't do any in-face interviews, so yeah, everything's on hold.
Yeah, I can attest to that for sure, because I have a few clients right now. In fact, I've made a placement on a client. He was supposed to be working remote, and I still haven't gotten paid on that yet. And usually I get paid within 2 weeks, and it's been past 2 weeks. I haven't even gotten paid yet, so I'm still waiting for monies to come in from some of the placements I've laid in. But yeah, a lot of these companies are definitely taking a wait and see view, and they're falling back right now. I can say that definitively. So I have a lot more time during the day now. I'm still recruiting, and I'm looking at resumes and sending stuff out. But people are like, hey, listen, I'll look at this person in XYZ period of time. Give me a couple of weeks. Carl, I'll let you know what's happening and that kind of thing. That's what's going on. Not a lot of very active hiring going on right now. I've got 1 or 2 active orders. I definitely still do have consulting requisitions. So, they're consultants who are looking, who people are looking.
Is it me?
People, I do.
No, he's breaking up.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's breaking up.
I'm sorry if I'm breaking.
Wait, we can go. We can hear you now, bro.
No. All right, I'm done. Anyway, go ahead. All right. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. All right, next item on the docket is from disrupt.co. 8 ways the slave mentality shaped Thailand. Since last century, slavery has become illegal in much of the world, but the crafty bunch, But the crafty bunch that they are, aspiring slave owners have long developed a cunning method to own slaves by instilling the slave mentality into the people. What is the slave mentality? If the people believe they are helpless children who can't live without you, they would sacrifice their freedom and bow at your feet. Where have we seen that?
We've seen that in many places. I don't. It's some of that going on here in Madison.
What was that?
Some of that here, some of that up here, the manosphere.
Well, no, I heard somebody else chime in. Was it this evolving? Who was that?
That was me.
Okay.
No, that was me. I said the manosphere.
Yeah, I'm
thing
saying, yeah, we see it the same.
Children are dependent upon their parents for the simple fact that they don't know how to do things. Mom, I'm hungry. Dad, buy me that toy. In order for the people to feel like helpless children who can't live without you, make every government process and procedure as difficult as possible. So they will come begging, please help, I don't know how to do it. Or they might come bearing a nice basket full of goodies and all bowing and smiling. Now time, please help. Natan Krog, please help. See, they would even pay for their own slavery. To instill the slave mentality is to create dependency, but be careful. Children are naughty these days. They might come yelling, where's my 5,000 baht? These days, children become bad quite easily. They are tempted by sinful ideals such as human rights, civil liberty, and equality under the law. So they start doing evil acts such as questioning your authority and even talking back to you. They would even stage protests on university campuses. Here's how you deal with them. Monopolize the language and weave a tale as old as time, the favorite theme of any human story, good versus evil. Take the word good and define it as Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha. Take the word bad and define it as Thanatorn. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. Hence, if you support Prayut, the good, you are good children. However, if you support Thanathon, the bad, you are naughty children. Therefore, if Thanathon wins an election, the Thai civilization as we know it would collapse. Then let the two groups of children fight against each other, and as long as they are too busy fighting each other, they would never think to unite and fight against you. If a Spartacus should rise among them, you should charge him with a crime of applying to become a member of parliament while having shares in a media company that once upon a time used to own a celebrity gossip magazine. Your good children will actually take this charge very seriously. Make the people feel like they owe you. The concept of servant of the people and the people's tax is your salary. Let's ignore them. If the people actually realize they are the bosses, this slave mentality trick isn't going to work. Instead, make them feel like you are benevolent, you are the benevolent master, and whatever they have in life, they owe it to you, and you should be thankful too. And should be thankful to you. For example, if people pay you 29 million baht in tax, keep 28 million baht and spread 1 million baht among them, but don't forget, put a stamp on the envelope to make sure they know who gives this to them. Not only would they feel gratitude, they would feel indebted to you. They would believe they owe you. They would give you their loyalty. They would vote for you. When you need them to come onto the streets and wreak havoc, they would go crazy for you. Keep the people entertained. This is very interesting.
Man.
The stuff you have
Mike, is this a Black history story?
No, actually, this is a story of Thailand, slavery.
No, she's being facetious. She's being facetious.
I know.
I'm being doubly facetious.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say it sounds like a portion of America, not even just Black people.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump, not to interrupt you, Mike, but Donald Trump slowing down the printing of those checks, put his name on it.
Oh yeah. Donald J. Trump. I don't even know what the J stands for. He smokes a J, maybe.
I think I know what J
Jesus.
stands for.
It stands for Jesus.
No, it stands for Joker.
Got to come for Jesus.
Jesus.
No, Jesus.
Jesus. Your mama calling you, man.
The stuff you hear on television, the shows, pop stars and soap operas, great job. Keep doing it. As long as the children are entertained, they are none the wiser. Even the Emperor Caligula knew to have the people the extravagance and excitement of
Caligula, Michael. Caligula.
sorry.
Caligula.
An excitement of blood and sand in the Colosseum. It's simply to keep the people occupied and happy. In the word of Maximus, are you not entertained? I don't know why this.
Oh, I'm trying to hold back. I gotta hold back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know why this keeps doing this.
Complex. I'm sitting back here freaking out, man.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
I know you're jumping. Oh, let me quiet down. I'm done. Let me quiet.
Ignorance, as they say, is bliss. They would never rise up against you if they are emotionally preoccupied and intellectually challenged. Interesting.
Whew, wait, what? Can you say that again, please?
They would never rise up against you if they are emotionally preoccupied and intellectually challenged.
Emotionally preoccupied and intellectually challenged. Carry on.
Keep the children in the cave. Simply put, the education system, keep it. Don't ever change it. Create a climate of fear. You have the law in your hand, use it, abuse it, and threaten the people with it. For example, every time you go on television to make an announcement about something, always remind the people about national security, loyalty, unity, and fake news, with the proverbial punishable by law. In olden days, slave masters used to whip to keep the slaves in line. In modern times, a prison term of 3 to 15 years keeps the people cowed in fear. Make sure the people accept their inferiority. This is great stuff. Genius, in fact, as long as people adhere to the social hierarchy, that there's such a thing as Puyai, the superior, and Punoi, the inferior, your slave plantation is secured. Ingrain it into the psyche. When the people use these terms and practice the concept in their daily lives, that's exactly how a slave mentality is weaved.
Wait, you mean kind of like people who subscribe to this WS thing? Kind of like that?
Or 2.0 versus 3.0. Think about
or that.
To
Yeah.
accept that they are inferior to others, that is just deliciously diabolical. Make them crawl. Enough said. So, and this is written by a person who's from Bangkok. So, man, I guess this is like the Asian Willie Lynch letter or something like that. Maybe.
I mean, it sounds awfully familiar for some strange reason.
Yeah. Must be like their version of like the Willie Lynch letter and Tu Wong Fu or something like that. So
yeah, the Tu Wong Fu letter.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
That might have sounded mildly. I'm sorry.
This is
dog. I'm back here falling out. I'm sorry, bro. This shit is live. It's live right.
I mean, he's reading this, dude, and sometimes it's almost as if it's like social media is imitating art and art is imitating life, and all three are just kind of colluding together, man.
It's too live. Wait, go ahead. Carry on. Carry on. Oh no. Woo.
Anybody else have anything you want to add to that? All right, let me move on to the next one. I'll skip this next article.
Hey, Mike, I did have a comment real quick that I did want to make though on the article that you read about how all the larger companies are getting the stimulus loans that the small companies should have got.
Okay.
Man, I talked to my business partner yesterday, right? So basically, because of the shutdown in LA, so he's basically he's had to shut down operations for going on. We're in the 7th week. He's 30K behind in rent.
Yeah, I believe that. Most of your dealerships, like I said, I talked to a landlord last year of some of these dealerships and some of these plazas. He said Best Buy is spending like 25 grand a month on rent.
A month. Yeah. My buddy's spending 15.
I mean, there's no way you can sustain yourself like that in an economy like this. I went to Best Buy earlier this week. I mean, obviously you can't go in there, but I mean,
was it curbside?
Yeah, it's all curbside. You can't go inside. I mean, you're not making any money.
Yeah. Who's ordering online and saying, yeah, I'm gonna order online and then I'm gonna go and pick it up at the curb?
Well, I should have probably took a picture of the parking lot because I just wanted to see what the parking lot was like down here. It was dead.
Wow.
You had 800 parking spaces down there. Only about 50 of them are filled. So, and that's with the workers.
Well, the workers. I was gonna say employees.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Hey, Complex. I was gonna ask. You were saying your business partner was behind. Has his landlord not been willing to like work with him?
Man, look, dude. I don't want to put too much of his business info out there, but let's just say he's in prime real estate.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, I figure if you kick people out in this time, like no one's gonna really run out to buy property. But if you're prime real estate, yeah, I get you.
No, actually, they're actually, like I said, when I say prime real estate, I literally mean like beachfront.
Oh wow, yeah. Never mind.
Right.
I see what you're going.
I kind of want to say this.
I talked to Nagone about it. He knows.
Yeah. We definitely wrapped on that. But another thing too, what a lot of leasees do when they get in a fairly big, especially a big national chain or something of that nature, they have disaster clauses in them in those leases. We'll say, well, if there's a disaster, like a flood or earthquake or something else that may come down, we may not be responsible for for paying a lease for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And this COVID could be easily convened as a disaster. So some of these guys have out clauses. So I just wanted to put that on the table as well.
What about insurance? Does the partner have insurance to cover this?
Well, they may have insurance, but the building has to have insurance on it as well.
No. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because it related to the article. Because when he and I were talking, when he and I were talking, I asked him about the small business stimulus loan, right? Because he was just kind of like, dude, like this is some bullshit, and I just really don't know right about now. Because May is what, a week and a half away, okay, and then now we're at 45K. So he's just kind of sitting here like, and there's literally nothing from California, like from Gavin Newsom, from anybody, from Eric Garcetti, the mayor of LA. There's nothing from nobody that says when we can actually go back to business, right? So he's just literally sitting here like, this is interesting. So month after month, this is just going to tick up. And so, yeah, who's accountable for this? Right? That's the kind of business dude he is. He's like, no. Who's accountable for this? Because it's one thing if my business is open and I can't pay my rent. It's on me because I'm not doing what's necessary to make sure that my business is successful, right? That I can maintain all of my costs and all that kind of stuff. But see, we're in a situation here where you're basically telling me I can't open. Okay? Now, in addition to that, there's supposed to be some assistance that you're supposed to be providing because you told me I can't open, and that money's not even available to me. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, at the same time, though, my landlord is just saying like, okay, hey, dude, March, April, May's coming up. I get that you can't open. I get it kind of, but yeah, we really do want our money though. Right? And that's pretty much where it is. So that's why I just kind of wanted to mention it in reference to that article, because literally, dude, my business partner in the micro transport, I mean, he's directly impacted by this, and I'm literally watching it. I had a long conversation with him last night. And I'm just like, wow, bro, really? So this is very ugly right about now, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
I think one of, moving forward, a lot of businesses will probably consider offering certain things so that they are categorized as essential business. Like Walmart sells a lot of the things that Best Buy does, but they also sell groceries. Ditto for Target. This is the reason why they're able to remain open, and people aggregate to those businesses because they're the only things that are open. I saw an actual video stream, and in the stream there's a rapper that will remain unnamed who said that that he goes out every day to Walmart because he said Walmart is popping. Those are his exact words, and I think that those businesses with that particular model will actually benefit from actually being able to absorb the market share of one-dimensional businesses such as Best Buy and Fry's and things like that. GameStop, forget about it. They're gone. They were already in bankruptcy trouble. They're finished. But Best Buy, it doesn't look good for them either because they were already kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know of a restaurant that did that, exactly what you were saying, Super True. Started couldn't open up, so he said, I'm going to start selling groceries next week or I'm out of business.
That's what Panera Bread, yeah. Panera Bread did the same thing.
Wait, what happened? With Panera? What happened?
Panera Bread started selling groceries because they can't have any sitting.
They started selling groceries?
Yeah.
Damn.
I got a Panera Bread right down the street from my house. They're talking about closing up.
Damn.
They're talking about closing up.
Well, you got to remember, like Panera Bread is relatively new. It's not new at by any stretch of the imagination, but it's relatively new. So at this point, Panera Bread is still leveraged out, and then Panera Bread has they're in prime locations. They're not in the hood, so their rents are high, and so they have to make ends meet somehow.
But I mean, I didn't realize that groceries was like a secondary business model that they had in their back pocket.
It wasn't, but they got.
I didn't know that.
Well, they become an essential business at that point.
Right. Oh, that's right. They do, don't they? And then that makes them eligible for like federal funds and shit like that.
Well, it makes them eligible to stay open.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, that, and it also makes them, because eligible businesses, there's a special stimulation in this in the stimulus funding for essential businesses. That's the reason why there's such an argument from the small business groups and why they're suing. Because they're like, how the fuck are you going to tell us that just because we got 12 employees, our business isn't essential?
And Panera's public, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic too. Of that they're having trouble, they can't leverage the markets or get someone to dump some money into them. So,
well, I mean, they're a. I mean, I used to go to Panera like to get bagels and shit, and do work and stuff. They got them all over SoCal, but that's kind of what they are. They're sort of like they're kind of like a better Denny's, basically. They're kind of like a high-end Denny's, right? So that's why I was really, when Mike said they're flipping groceries now, I was really kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, like, damn, that's a flip.
Got to do something to stay open.
You got to do something to stay open, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let me get to this last item on the docket. This is from Forbes.com. A more intelligent approach to capitalism, if there was ever such. As loyal readers of this column will know, your respondent views capitalism as the economic expression of our species' most powerful advantage, adaptation, and believes that capitalism is one tool that has the potential to allow our species to thrive in a changing climate. In the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, I have been dismayed to see headlines blaming capitalism for the pandemic or for some aspect of it. In my view, these commentators have identified real problems, but mistakenly associate them with the wrong agent. Rather than becoming its effects or bemoaning its effects, we should rejoice in capitalism's power. Interesting. However, while rejoicing, we must seek to reform the deeper structural issues that cause capitalism to manifest itself in the way it does. Doing so, we have a chance to create a form of capitalism that is more intelligent, less destructive, and ultimately much more value creative than the one that grew out of the Industrial Revolution. Capitalism is successful because it is natural. Thanks to a few generations worth of physics envy, uh, modern mainstream economists appear to have little sense the work they do has a relationship to natural processes. To gain insights into the natural characteristics of complex economic systems, your correspondent finds it more helpful to read the work of ecologists. A few years ago, the U.S. Army War College's Strategic Studies Institute site published a paper entitled Defense Energy Resilience. This paper draws lessons from the work of two Australian ecologists, Walker and Soule, to discuss the concept of resilience from the perspective of a complex interdependent system. The SSI authors posted a diagram that has struck with me forever over 10 years and which I include in my presentation to investor groups even today. Growth and predictability. So cheapest global resources economically optimized, so conservation, release, reorganization, and rapid growth. Okay. So it goes from left to right. Crash, unable to access needed resource, unprepared to engage adequate alternatives. So creative destruction here, and then you have growth and predictability on the left-hand side. Rethink and rediscovery of local diverse resources, adaptation to new resource limits. And then easiest, local energy exploiting low-hanging fruit. Thomas and Kerner point out that complex systems operate in 4 distinct phases: conservation, release, reorganization, and rapid growth. The conservation stage tends to be long and stable in complex systems due to the system's innate tendency to preserve equilibrium. Participants in conservation stage systems win by maximizing the use of available resources and tend towards efficiency generating specialization. 65 million years ago, dinosaurs were perfectly adapted to compete in a conservation stage system that had started nearly 200 million years before. Enormous, highly specialized herbivores consume countless tons of flora. Enormous, highly specialized carnivores predated the herbivores young and sick. These giant beasts of the Triassic, they are, in my mind, very similar to the giant, highly specialized multinational corporations to which we have become so accustomed during the post-war period. For instance, Alphabet's production capacity is an almost perfect analog to the Tyrannosaurus Rex tiny arms. Alphabet's operations are specialized to create software that extracts personal information from consumers, but is not set up to create physical products. T-Rex's jaws were perilously evolved to rip large chunks of meat, but their spindly arms were practically useless.
Well, okay, I'll let you finish this one. Yeah.
Yeah, recent research has definitely proven that an asteroid thrust the dinosaur system into the release stage, a period characterized by a complete failure of conservation stage rules. Perfectly tuned to making efficient use of resources that were no longer available, the dinosaurs quickly died off. The COVID-19 pandemic is giving us a taste of the release stage in our own world. Global supply chains, finely tuned to operate on a just-in-time basis, have been under strain, resulting in empty grocery store shelves and medical professionals in New York wearing garbage bags rather than protective gear. Nagone Levin can speak to that. He's from there.
Oh, okay.
Pundits are talking about COVID-19. Pundits are talking about COVID-19 being a dress rehearsal for future pandemic events. My belief is that COVID-19 does present us with a foreshadowing of release, even in some form. But whether that manifests itself as a pandemic, a widespread crop failure, or some unknowable black swan tragedy, no one yet knows. Dinosaurs were dumb beasts. The smartest of them was about as clever as my black lab mix. They had no capacity to survive post-asteroid. Humans, self-aware, cooperative.
Hold on one second, Mike.
I was about to say that's not true. They're called
Dinosaurs.
birds.
Dinosaur, yeah, but not only that, but that in their form they existed in, they lived for well over 100 million years. They were very successful. Very successful.
They're still here. You just call them crocodiles and shit.
Yeah, very successful. We still have some remnants of them around.
Yeah.
Will man live 100 million years?
I think he means that the Tyrannosaurus Rex himself.
Well, T-Rex, from what we could see, existed in his form for maybe around 8 or 9 million years. It's a little hard to say, but the animal was around for quite a while. He existed. He came up from a smaller form and then grew big, I guess, because there was so much carrion laying around that they even said that the T-Rex evolved at that level with a big head and small arms, because he was more of a scavenger than really a fighter or warrior as we have in the cartoons and all this other kind of stuff that we have. So that's why it evolved like that. So maybe we should think about how such beasts came to be what they were. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've heard that same theory about the Tyrannosaurus Rex actually being a scavenger. In my childhood, I actually extensively studied dinosaurs. I actually did a research project on dinosaurs as a child. So I did some extensive research on the Tyrannosaurus Rex and other Allosaurus, things like that were in that particular lineage. And it evolved, basically to not only to scavenge, but it evolved to not have competitors, and not be predated upon, because of its size. There were not other dinosaurs that would attack it as well, because there are other carnivorous dinosaurs that would also fall victim to other carnivorous dinosaurs, much like you see now in the animal kingdom. Even other carnivores will consume a carnivore if it's able to be predated upon. So, did you say carnivorous or cornelius? Carnivorous. Carnivorous. Oh, I thought you said Cornelius. I said, I know that. You don't be
So, Mike, back to the article.
You guys are crazy.
Intelligent, with the added benefit of having opposable thumbs, opposes a much greater capacity to escape dinosaurs' great fate. This capacity exists because of our adaptability. Adaptability lies at the root of capitalism. What people decry now as the failure of capitalism is simply a side effect of the natural tendency of participants in a complex system to maximize resources within a state of conservation. Capitalism solves problems. Complex systems seeks stability. Stability favors incumbents in a conservation state, no matter how ultimately destructive the actions of those incumbents might be. With our understanding of these dynamics, we should be focusing on altering the rules by which our complex systems function to prepare for a shift to the next stage, to the next two stages in our system's evolution. Altering the rules will encourage capitalism to solve the most critical roadblocks to an abundant, sustainable future. This chain of logic suggests that our policymakers must consider how to engineer a system in which capitalists are incentivized to solve problems of supply chain resilience, cheap, clean, and plentiful energy production and storage, the production of nutritious food, low ratios of waste to product, and all the other factors that go into sustaining life on the blue-green island floating in the midst of a cold, dark sea. Capitalism is the best way for us to survive, but its manifestation is contingent on the rules for the system in which it operates. Those rules are at least partly subject to our control. We must change the rules if our species is to thrive. Intelligent investors take note. I know you guys want to jump in. Go right ahead.
Well, I think this guy's talking a lot of shit up in here. But at the end of the day, what he did say that I think is somewhat correct is that, we have to look at capitalism and shape it for how it can best work for us. And we have done that. And quite a bit of shaping capitalism to work well for us is we're going to have somewhat of a unfortunately, I've come to this realization over time. You're gonna have somewhat of a socialist type.
Oh, did you just say the S word?
Oh, I sure did. I'm getting ready to say it.
You just said the S word.
I'm getting ready to say it one more again. And unfortunately, for what a lot of people don't understand with respect to economics is that socialism is the kind of lubricant for capitalism. So we have come to some level of that. And once again, it's people who might want to argue with me when we had these huge failures of capitalism that we've seen, especially since 2008, and what we're kind of going through right now. What do we see? We see a overall kind of a socialist undercarriage that comes through and helps to prop it back up, keep it moving, and we move along with it. And for anybody who understands 2008, a little bit what we're going on right now, this is somewhat of what we start to get into the UBI concept and all of that. That's exactly what we see. So I'm of the mindset, we already have that. This guy here is talking smack. I think he's full of shit to a certain degree. Nice article, but the hell with him. He bullshitting up in there because there's no bottom line to what he's talking about. And when he doesn't have a bottom line to what he's talking about with respect to capitalism, he's trying to bullshit me. So he's a bullshitter. But I'm going to cut the bullshit out and totally get right to the bottom line as to what is the bottom line of capitalism. There is a mix of capital. To keep capitalism going, you're going to need a certain degree of socialism to keep it moving. One complements the other. It is what it is. That's what our system is. Well, sorry for those who mean that.
In this article,
go ahead.
He references the complexity of the system on numerous occasions. That word pops up, and this complexity is it complex by design, or is it some type of just complicated because we have so many intricate moving parts that don't need to be there. And what I mean by that is, like Nagone said, there needs to be some sort of socialism, but then we have to ask ourselves, what are the things that are essential? Things that, when we talk about essential things that will be subsidized, like obviously there are people that work and they may work full-time, they contribute to society, but based on their income, they wouldn't be able to afford all of the things that are necessary for their survival. Like when we're talking about healthcare coverage, if they have to pay for a hospital bill out of their pocket, they would never be able to afford that. So obviously something like that would be subsidized through a socialist model. But beyond that, what are some of the things that that we need? Just as a human being, in this society, what are the necessities? Those are what we look at subsidizing, and everything else is like an added benefit. Because when you talk about, and I think I posed this question before, like we talk about UBI, what is the base level of sustenance that an American should be expected to have? Like, should we be expected to have 3 meals a day and a roof over our head, or should we be expected to have 3 meals a day, a roof over our head? Everybody in the household has their own cell phone. Everybody in the household, you know, maybe there's a PlayStation, big screen TV. Maybe there's a vehicle in every household. You know, maybe there's not.
It's whatever the United States signed up for in the 1970s with the United Nations under the Chapter 7, that they have to uphold these sort of human rights and what they call SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. They signed up for this. It wasn't the people that signed up for it. They signed up for it, and now they can't uphold it because they don't want to. So you need
does everybody that signed? Okay, so when we say United States signed up for it, what other countries signed up for that?
Every nation that signed the UN Charter.
Yep, every country that did it.
But think about this though. Every nation that signed the UN Charter, what type of conditions are their citizens living in?
Well,
so like my question becomes: is this idea actually achievable? Is it realistic?
Yes. In the United States, it's achievable. In Venezuela or Honduras, that may not be achievable immediately, but in the United States, it's easily attainable. There's no reason why the federal government came up with redlining. There's no reason to do something like that. There's no reason to destroy the future of Black people in America. There was no reason to do it other than for their own selfishness.
For their own selfishness, their evil and their hatred of you.
Yeah.
The government showed you here in this country, they don't like you. They don't like Black people. They don't like you. They have shown this time and time in our history. They don't like
time
you.
Something pops up sorry, go ahead. Every time something pops up that show the absolute catastrophic failings of capitalism, you see articles like this. And before COVID, it was the healthcare system. And every time somebody talk about healthcare system, you see articles come up saying, well, we actually got the best healthcare system because our system operates on capitalism.
And we'd say that that's total bullshit because you've got a lot of people who are covered. Most people who are covered, or the people who've gone bankrupt here, here in this country behind medical bills, are people who have coverage. How is that? How do you explain that? How does that work? So your system doesn't work, and right now it's being exposed. And what DE Raptor is saying right now it's so dead on the money. It's actually not even funny.
And he's absolutely talking about capitalism feels this need that when you need something. Nope, that's technology. When we needed, capitalism didn't build an airplane. Didn't invent the first airplane. Right. Capitalism didn't invent the first scalpel. Capitalism didn't invent the
that's exactly. It's technology.
There was a need for it.
Perfect.
That's why I say, you know what? If I built this, we can do this with it. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's excellent. It's technology that drives this. Technology that moves stuff over. We know that.
We know that. When capitalism fails, it's gonna fail just like how it's gonna fail catastrophically like it's failing now. Because
and
this is not even extreme. Capitalism, period. If you don't put some kind of leverage on it, you know what I'm saying? It's like making a rocket. If you can make a rocket that will fly you completely off the planet, you can't control it.
You've got to have some measure of it. And the only thing we have to do is we have just look from the 20th century. I mean, over the last 300 years, we've had many crashes. But when we take a look at the current iteration of our system, our modern system, we can about that from the earliest beginnings of the 20th century. We're not even going to go into the later aspects of the 19th, but let's go into the 20th, where we first saw this is not even a full 65, not even full 50 years after slavery, and here we are, 1907, our first crash, and then J.P. Morgan and these guys had to bail out the whole system, And then we saw another huge crash 20 some odd years later in 29, 22 years later in 29, another massive crash. And then and we didn't come out of that until literally after the Second World War. And then from there we started to move. We had some small little hiccups. Things ran okay because our economy was running so strong after the post-war era. But after that started to fail out, and then we started seeing wages stagnate and so forth at the end of the 70s. We went right into the 80s, and in 87, bang, another big crash. And then, we had 87, then we had, then after that, we reassembled, we re-annealed, and then there was some other little hiccups here and there. And then, boom, we had the big, massive crash that we ran into in 2008 that we haven't really gotten out of. And here we still are trying to prop up capitalism in many other ways. And we're seeing the way to keep it moving and to keep the grease of the wheels rolling is through some level of socialism and injections of pure socialism. We had to save the banks, so we had to save the auto industry and so forth. So these are the things that we're seeing. So when I see guys write articles like this, like the E-Raptor says, this is where you see this stuff happening, and you see these guys come up with these articles. You have to look at this with great degree of suspicion. You have to look at what these guys are really talking about. I know he's bullshitting because he's got no bottom line here. And the bottom line is the grease to capitalism is socialism. Unfortunately, that's what it is. And there's no one here that can actually tell me any different.
This capitalism that we have worked very well after World War II because the U.S. was the only game in town.
We were the only game in town. Everybody else was torn out of the frame.
Yep.
We were rebuilding economies. We had a surplus of
everything,
of materials and everything, and we were the world's general store. So of course everybody bought into it. But how long did that last?
I was going to add too, what you've had too since that time. You obviously had New Deal politics that came into play, but what you've had really since post really Vietnam and the rise of the conservative movement is a large swath of this country that has sought to undermine any sort of things that actually benefit them and help create the middle class that they're in.
Well, you had the middle class coming in, but really the conservative movement to a large extent came up, in the 60s and really came to a head on the Goldwater and all that. And this was during much of the civil rights movement when you started to move. This was a counterbalance to that. This was to shut your black ass down. That's what this was ultimately about. And then make sure that wealth was consolidated and kept in their hands, and you didn't get a piece of that.
It never came to black people.
That was a very big part of what this was about. And that's why under conservatism, under law and order, you saw more black people being jailed than any other civilized nation on this world or on this earth. And you saw, of course, greater redlining and these other things that went about to see to it that you did not acquire wealth through real estate and so forth. And this was about
economics.
And this was about tearing you out the frame. And that's when I look at these black conservatives, I look at them like, you're fucking crazy. Do you guys even understand what you're looking at? But they don't understand it. I understand a lot of it's fear and let me just give it to man and we'll be okay. And I understand it's not gonna save you. But that's I can talk about this for hours. But that's kind of where we're at, and you have to look at this for what it is. And most people don't want to do that. They don't want to do it.
It's like this capitalist guy who wrote this thing. It's like pollution in the car. We had the opportunity to get rid of pollution. You know what I'm saying? We built a car that we knew that the smog was caused by car. But then when they say, you know what, we can shut this down to 90. We can get rid of 99% of this stuff if we use this kind of technology. Everybody come out and say, you know, this is capitalism, and if you force us to put this technology in there, is socialism, and this technology costs so much that the companies won't survive. Guess what? If the companies that put the thing in there are air be clean, they would have charged a reasonable amount of money to put it in there. The technology would have changed and it would have made the price cheaper. But they never did it. And that was to keep certain people. You know what I'm saying? This whole thing that when the goal was right, I don't have to repeat what he said. keep black people down. And there's a price to pay for doing that. Just like it was a price to pay for letting smog into the atmosphere, there's a price to pay for what they did to black people.
They sacrificed the strength of this country behind their savagery and evil. That's why I say at the heart of this country is a Medusa, is an evil, horrific figure, because these guys don't have to be this way. They don't have to be this way.
No.
And they've hurt. Only thing they've done is weaken their nation. And these sons of bitches can't see it. I mean, some of them do, but many of them do not. And still to this day, that's what I'm saying. For every brother who's out here, you got to look at what's going on. I mean, that's one of the things we talk about here. Guys are talking about all kind of bizarre and arcane shit on these other channels, talking about broads and all those other dumbass shit. But they're not sitting here looking at what's got you in the cage. What's really got you in the cage? These guys don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. I understand why they do. You know, they sucker late. But at the end of the day, we here at the BBT, we gonna look at this. We gonna look dead. We gonna look dead in its heart. It ain't gonna be pleasant when we gonna see looking back at us. But we gonna deal with this. Yeah. We gonna deal with this.
Yeah, I think the not United Nations, the World Economic Forum touched on this last year, that we're moving into we're moving into a necessity for shared economics. Well, you have all these micro transportation and not Netflix. You know, your libraries were probably your first pieces of infrastructure and institutions that involve shared economics. But if you take that same institution and leverage it out across other institutions, you see how efficient it really is. No one ever goes to the library and fighting over a book, you know, or a reading space. That sort of system works. But if you calcify the wealth to one group of people, namely that of Caucasoid people, then yeah, you're gonna have some big problems, because everybody else is gonna be scrambling for nothing, you know. So
Hey, Mike, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
We have a perfect example of what's going on with China and Africa. Chinese come and follow America's protocol. They go into Africa. They brought their own people in. We're gonna build a building for you. We're gonna use our own labor. We're gonna do this. Mm-hmm. Now this coronavirus thing is exposed the wickedness of that approach, and the foolishness of that approach. And what's happened is that they're being upended, and they can't. Right now, they're running around trying to find a solution to it, and they can't find it. They say, "Hey, we've been your partners for so long." No. That wasn't a partnership.
Yeah.
Young people are saying, "No, that wasn't a partnership." Nope. You gotta respect us, and that's what America did with black people in America. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a partnership. You know, it wasn't, we're gonna sit down together and break bread together. No. And some people believe that, you know what, things have changed. We got a piece of the pie now. Huh.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they're starting to call it indentured servitude now. So they're trying to reshape the language from what it was, but at the same time, you know, I think Western capitalism has its issues. Everywhere else seems to have adopted a different system. And it works efficiently in Germany. It works efficiently in many other European countries. Works just fine in Russia. I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, in Germany, you one of the things that you've seen was killed here, but it wasn't killed in Germany, was the union movement. You know, yep. Slavery was about labor, and once we came out of slavery, and then once you saw Roosevelt come into office, and you saw so much of the CIO at first, and then the AFL-CIO, and all these different Pullman's Porter union. I mean, all these different union movements came up, and were strong. You know, they've been systematically cut back on, and that's why you see wealth concentrating at the top. You know, with a very small few, and everybody else throwing out the frame. Germany, you don't have that. Germany, you have a very strong union. The Walmart workers in Germany are unionized. So there's a union all over. They have unions, so that keeps the people in the game. And then they take a lot of money with respect to education and retrain their workers for new areas. I mean, they have a society that is going to consistently move and grow and keep them up, running, well educated, well fed, fairly wealthy, and moving forward. Here we have a different view on that game. We have a different view on it, and we have a lot of people bamboozled and scammed. And we don't. I mean, we could talk for hours about the union movement, which is exceedingly important, which puts a certain limit on the super wealthy. That's what that was all about. That's why they destroyed that. You don't have unions around anymore, and that's why you see what you have going on here. They've used Black people as a tremendous battering ram to tear a lot of this stuff out the frame, but it's screwed a lot of these white guys as well. They just don't see it. They bought into it, and they're as dumb as the day is long. But yet, they're being used, but yet they're looking at us as those to be taken advantage of. And now you see how a lot of them are. They're sitting there. Well, we should be taking advantage of that weakness. We should be taking advantage of that because we were actually in a position in which we could do so. But that's how we need to be thinking. And that's why we have our fourth industrial revolution conversations here and so forth that so many other people just don't understand because they don't want to sit back and listen and really understand what we're really talking about here. But if you did, you would see the opportunities and some of the things that we're looking at that could really work well for us. And
I was gonna say, couldn't you make the
conversation? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, couldn't you make the argument that the union movement never even got a full grip in America? Because I've read that. I know in the South they weren't big, and then I.
Full grip.
Oh, you think so?
And many wars were fought behind it. I mean, there were battles, literally, where you had the Pinkertons and the and the auto workers and so forth, literally lined up, tearing. I mean, having full battles, railroad workers and so forth. You've had a lot of warfare, a lot of tremendous violence going on. One of the biggest union movements you had that went crazy here, that really set policies for the plutocracy here was that the plutocracy set for us was the general strike of New Orleans in 1892. That was huge. That was massive, and that was an interracial move that literally shut all of New Orleans down, shut it down. And it was Black and white who got together, and the white corporate structure sat back and looked at this and said, "Holy shit!
Can't let the Black people and white
shit,
people
and let Blacks and whites get together here. We're finished." So they had to come up with some level of keeping you separated. Yeah. So keeping you separated, so you didn't join up to ultimately put restrictions on them. So they came up with the Jim Crow and the black laws and all that. That came out that came out enterprise-wide out of that. Enterprise-wide, because they understood Blacks and whites linked up in this union movement. They only be the wealthy, super rich could only get so rich. Because you were going to have a union movement that was going to guarantee you a certain wage, certain benefits, and so forth. That was going to keep you going, and they could only make so much, and they were like that. This is not what they were about. And what came out of that, Plessy versus Ferguson, all that came out after that, and everything started to move more and more deep. And then Roosevelt came in, went against his patrician wealthy class, and started to back up a lot of the union movements. There was Democratic through the Democratic Party, which moved a lot of Blacks into it and all that like that. And you saw a big change there, and you saw how we had to get back up on our feet. And he used a lot of socialist and movements, if you will, to really get the economy kind of moving again. And then, of course, the Second World War got us out of that. But after he left and after he was out of there, that same class that's in power right now in the economic sector, they've been wearing away the union movement ever since. And it was all about knocking that out of the box. That limited their power, limited how much wealth they could take. And now you don't have unions hardly anymore in the United States. And look at where wealth has concentrated. You've got maybe about 5,000 or 6,000 people who own more than than 200 million people here in this country. I mean, shit is crazy. So, I mean, that's that's what's going on, man. I mean, this wasn't supposed to happen like this. That's why you're having these tremendous upheavals and some of the stuff that we're going to see, and this is not going to end well.
The
But
funny thing is,
that's where we're at. Anyway,
the funny thing is that Germany has some of the world's wealthiest people living there, and they have some of the world's wealthiest corporations. But these people got together and said, you know what, we need our country to be like this in order for. And they created that. They built that system so it protects the country itself.
It does, and when you look at the top executive, the top CEO, he makes just about maybe 20 to 30 times what the lowest worker in his company makes. Here, that individual makes 300 to 400, maybe close to 1,000 times what the lowest worker makes. It's crazy. It's crazy. And bonuses and all this other kind of crap that they're taking. It's ill. It's just feeding frenzy. And they're greasing on your backs, and people here are taking that. All these tough ass white boys are sitting back here. They're nothing but serfs and slaves themselves. We've got a whole slave class right now that I believe is your millennials and your Zs who are effective serfs. Who are effective serfs? If they ain't gonna be able to buy houses and shit. They're gonna work. They're gonna be well fed. They're gonna, they may have some nice little toys or whatever. But they're not gonna be able to grab a part of the American dream unless somebody like me or somebody like yourself or whoever can, give them your property, and give them the house that you have or something else like that. That's about it. And a few others.
I would even argue that they've even been educated to be serfs.
I mean, you literally have a serf class coming up, and that's many of your millennials, your Zers. If you don't own property and you're not able to will them over with inheritance, then the odds are they're really going to grab a part of the American dream. The few technocrats, the technocratic people who will have enough sense to get into the technical arena and make some of this big money that's in here, some of them will make it. Some of them will do it. But on the whole, you've got a class of serfs. That's what's been left to them through this system that we have here right now. American serfdom. Literally with your vassal class and your proletariats and your and so forth. This is what you've got. This is what you've got going on right now. American feudalism at its finest. Fuck that. That's how I look at it. Fuck that.
Hey, Mike, I was going to ask too, when you were talking about shared economics in that article, was it just talking about just from the model and efficiency, or was it also talking about sustainability? Because one of the other things I was hearing, like especially when I was in school, was, as you talked about the rise of the BRICS and other nations, they were basically saying that you're going to have to go to something like that, more shared economics, because you can't export the American model around the world because it would be catastrophic for the planet.
You literally cannot exploit a model of crass exploitation, right? You like sustainability has to have a place in things, right? And if you're just ravaging countries for resources, there will become a point where pretty much you're going to ravage things to the point where you've gone beyond nature's natural capacity to replenish resources.
Yep.
No, to your point, to your question, Renaissance Man, the thing about shared economics, and the reason why I referenced it to that article is because Western capitalism, as it stands right now, is not sustainable going forward. We know that many jobs are going to be lost due to automation. We know that you have a rising demographic that's going to be a current demographic and actually an aging demographic that is largely unskilled and unemployable going forward in the next 10 years, especially Black men. This sort of system, it can't replenish itself. It's just not sustainable because it doesn't have enough worker input and to get the output that's necessary. What are they going to do? You have to start working on forming co-ops in every aspect of human activity, including that of living. These idea of these big mansions and all that stuff is going to go away at some point. It's going to have to, because you can't sustain it.
I was going to argue it pretty much has with the advent of Airbnb and stuff like that. Like what what need do you really have for a McMansion?
Yeah. Yeah, Miss Evolving in the chat says a dumpster house. Yeah. Yeah, that, I mean, I'm not to that extreme, but the rise of tiny houses has proven that people are looking at this from a different perspective, and these sort of tiny house communities and shared plots of land and stuff like that.
That gives you mobility too,
Yeah.
to move, like pick up your house and literally move it versus selling it. And you know,
Yeah.
you have people who literally say, I'm going to travel across the country and live out of a tiny house.
Well, the question then becomes is, well, because there's a tiny house community out here. The question then becomes, what is your vehicle for wealth building? A lot of people build wealth through real estate. When you're talking about tiny homes, these are homes that are conventionally what you would consider to be a mobile home. They don't have an actual concrete
Foundation,
slab foundation. So these homes are able to actually be transported. So then it becomes a depreciating asset once it doesn't have a foundation. And so when you have that, you're no longer looking at home ownership as wealth building. Like, that's the only reason why I bought property. I initially bought property when I was 25. I bought a house that was just out of feeling like, that was part of my ascension to manhood, was just that I felt like I needed to own a home as a statement. But, I look at things a lot different now. And the only reason why I bought property is wealth building and revenue generating purposes. So if you can't do that no more because you have a shared economy model, or you're doing the tiny home communities, or you're reverting to an apartment, or I won't say reverting, or transitioning to apartment living, much like which occurs in Europe. Like, when I was in Europe, everybody had an apartment. Wasn't too many people that owned a home.
Yeah.
Everybody lived in an apartment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think a part of an answer to your question is cooperative business, cooperative ownership. I think that's how we're going to start seeing some of the new wealth built in the next century and moving forward. I think that's what we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, remember we were talking about fractionalized ownership on the blockchain and shit like that. I think Ty City had talked about a brother who created a token,
and we've seen where. And I just want to say also, your banking system as well. You're going to see more publicly owned banks. We talk about that here on the Brain Trust as well. So we talk about that. Some people may not like some of that, but these are going to be some of the answers I think we're going to have to grab a hold of and deal with more in the future, realistically, and really vest more into that. We see where it works in a lot of places around the world. And we're going to have to play that more here. Now, the reason why the oligarchy, if you have here, and the structure doesn't want you to do that, because now you're talking about groups of people joining up together to literally as a buttress against them, and that's what the cooperative will mean. And they're not going to want you. They're not going to want that. They're going to want to snatch all that and take that for themselves and give you nothing, and have you literally own nothing, pay them, and sit back and and say, "Oh my God, look at the man on the hill." Fuck that. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think people are going to be looking for that as an answer. You don't hear about some of the publicly owned banks that are out here that have never had a problem. Why? Through capitalism and all that, how they've never had a bank run, never had a failure. Why is that? Serves its community that it's working for. So we're gonna have to look at some of this stuff. I mean, we can get into this a lot deeper later on. I'm just bringing some of this up right now because it's something that we do talk about here on the channel. Some of these brothers here know exactly what I'm talking about, and these are going to be some of our answers that we're going to be looking towards in the future. And none of this is new. This is, but they're those that are in the structure that don't want you thinking this way, because it's going to cut a lot of what they're doing back to the fat meat.
Yeah. I use tiny houses only as an example of how people are thinking, not so much about the action itself, right? So it's not just tiny houses, but in the plots and stuff that they reside on, but also the Uber, Lyft,
Yep.
Uber Eats,
Yep.
e-scooters, and
Sharing economy.
Netflix and stuff like that. That stuff is really starting to take place where that's the mindset that people don't need to own massive levels of physical assets.
A complex. What were you talking about? Because you were just bringing it up. You were talking about the fractional shares. You want to break that down a little bit?
Yeah, fractional shares, like just regards to with regards to fractional shares and stuff. It's having micro portions of ownership. It's having micro portions of ownership. So instead of like having a whole share, you're owning small pieces. Okay, and so things like blockchain and all that kind of stuff is what's going to enable you to own a fraction or a piece of something, as opposed to say like a whole share. So you can have like fractions of a myriad of things, and then collectively these things will generate revenue for you. Robinhood, the app, they're already rolling out the fractionalization feature on their app now, where you can buy like a fraction or a portion of an Apple stock as opposed to like a whole share.
Yeah, that's one area, but the thing is, like I said, libraries are your first institutions that really demonstrate that this model is functional. It's just a matter of translating that into other areas of activity. I know here we've been talking about a community wireless system for internet, because internet is considered a utility now. But how do you actually implement something like that? To lay down fiber in the street would actually cost you $200 million. Well, you're gonna have to move to an alternative, which is like a Wi-Fi system. This is the way how people are thinking nowadays. They're not thinking about these other ways of just complete ownership for themselves. They're not thinking like that anymore.
Well, Mike,
That's
when
right.
you look at that particular model and the way you explained it, like one could look at a healthcare premium as sort of a fractional, not necessarily an ownership, but it almost like a buy into something. And maybe you use it, maybe you don't, maybe you use it more than other people, maybe they use it more than you do. Because like if say for instance you have like a fractional ownership of, say for instance, a vehicle, right, or a timeshare, right? A lot of people who own timeshares don't actually take advantage of them as much as they could because of scheduling concerns and things like that. But the people that are able to take advantage of it more, they're able to utilize that service, and they paid the same amount as the person who doesn't use it as much. So when we look at healthcare, for instance, I don't really use my healthcare like some other people use it. I see my doctor on annual visits, but as far as me getting sick, needing surgery and stuff like that, I really don't use it. So then the question then becomes is, when we start talking about fractional ownership of certain things, or some type of shared communal type model, to a certain extent, this extends into socialism. And again, the question then becomes, what are essential things and what are not? Because, like for instance, the public library, this is something that's deducted from taxes. So it's subsidized. Everybody's already paid for it, whether they utilize it or not. And the problem then becomes is that there's certain services that a lot of people feel as though, if I don't want to pay into that because that's not something that I ever use. But then because of that communal model, people are forced to pay for things, really, and it's upping their expenditures and lessening their amount of free capital because it's already deducted. And so I think that's where the actual angst comes from the socialist model, is that, well, dang, I'm paying more for, just like you pay your taxes, and then you find that, the government spends X amount of money on foreign aid, and, illegal immigrants who haven't paid into the tax system are able to come here, and, they're offered certain protections, able to get driver's license, and they're taking advantage of the infrastructure that they haven't paid into, things of that nature. that gives people angst when you reference a socialist model.
Well, when you take a look at the immigrants who come in here who are getting driver's licenses and doing all of that, you say they haven't paid into. I'm gonna give you something that's you guys are not gonna want to hear. You should literally walk up and kiss every single Mexican you see on the lips when you see them, because they're the ones who are actively paying for your Social Security. Whether you understand that or not.
I've kissed several Mexican women on the lips.
That's the truth. I mean, I know you don't want to hear that, but that's a hardcore part of the game. Why do you think they're bringing these people in here to sit up here and just snatch money? No, they're bringing them in here to undercut. You know, they come in here to, you know, pay them a little bit less money to keep this game going, to keep, the price of some of what you like to buy cheaper. And this part of payoff with that. And a lot of these guys are going to be paying into the system. Their kids are going to be in here and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And that's what's keeping this going. That's unfortunate, and it's a hardcore part of what's going on in our system right now that you and many, not you per se, but the collective yous and others don't want to deal with. I can deal with that. I understand what's going on. I understand this game intimately. I'm going to tell you that. You ain't gonna like to hear that. That's what's going down. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? What's your answer to that, son?
Yeah, so I brought up this site, Ujima, for a reason. I was a part of Ujima a couple of years ago, back when the Brain Trust started.
Yeah, this is 2018 right here.
Yeah, so they're already thinking like this, Super Triz. They have a whole entire platform dedicated to just that. You could thank Chuck Turner for this. He passed away back in February, but he's the architect behind this. That this sort of socialist shared economics model is actually it's in development, and it's actually a feasible studies that has.
I was gonna say, Mike, can you post a link to this, man? Because for y'all that don't know, this was maybe kind of like, Mike, would you say like the first kind of case study or proof of concept that we kind of built the Brain Trust off of?
Yeah.
It's
all based on co-ops, and it's all based on a shared economics model. So no one person dominates and owns everything. It's actually shared across the board, and they actually have some investors into it, but you can actually donate to it.
Hey, you said the brother who started this passed away?
Passed away in February. Yep. Chuck Turner.
Oh shit, man! Rest in peace.
Yeah. He was the former Boston City Council member, first city council member in the country to actually open his own office and allow other disenfranchised people to come in and actually build their platforms within his office. So he ran his office like a political hub, a political incubator, so to speak. So no one else has ever done anything like that before while they were in office.
Well, you do stuff like that, and then you get stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'll drop
it's like, I remember, man, even I think the website looked different when we started kind of digging into the Ujima. Like when you brought it kind of to at least my attention, mm-hmm. This looks a lot different, man.
Yeah, things have changed. Things have changed drastically. Let me see if I see if I record. I don't know any of these people. These are all new people. But yeah, anyways, this is how Black people think, at least out here. I don't know about anywhere else. I know they're trying to take this nationwide, but UBI is a big discussion for them as well.
See, Mike, now you're juggling my memory, because okay. So I remember you guys literally have to go back to 2018. You'll hear us talk about Ujima and UBI. You'll hear this like over 2 years ago. That's like when that kind of triggered a memory, because we were talking about it as it relates to UBI. We were talking about Ujima as it relates to hemp and cannabis, micro transport. It was everything.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, but that this is the model, like for anybody, like for those of you who are listening, like this was sort of like the first proof of concept that we really dug into. And it was the co-op model, right? From which pretty much business modeling kind of springboarded off of that.
Yeah, and they were one of the first people I've heard talk about public banking for Black people. You know?
That's another thing. All like basically, like literally, dude, this is kind of like the first proof of concept of all of the concepts that you hear us talk about: industrialization, UBI, like all of these things. Like this is sort of like the first, I guess you can say, civic platform that really kind of reflects these ideals, like in a civic platform. Like again, like for those of you who don't know, this is really Ujima is the first proof of concept that we really started building off of.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is stuff we've been talking about, and you know, I go a little hard on occasion, but I do it because I enjoy it. But at the end of the day, these are some of the things we're gonna have to look at, especially for, and we're gonna look at ourselves for Black people in particular. We have to start thinking someone in this way, and we talk about it here on the Brain Trust a lot. So this is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
well, for me, I was just gonna say, for me, just real quick, Mike, for me, this is also sort of like the proof of where our roots come from, you know. So again, just for anyone out there who's kind of in like the other realms of this whole space, right? And you hear things like you need to understand the actual reality of things, right? There is an origin to the Brain Trust, okay? Just know this.
Yeah.
As far as concepts, ideas, all of it, there's an origin to all of this.
Yeah. This is one of their documents here, organizing for freedom cities, building for liberation. Yeah, a lot of this stuff has been well researched by them and other contributors to this. And so everyone's starting to rethink this whole capitalist sort of system. It's not, they're looking at this as this may not be for us. There's a comment in the chat from JR. He says, do you guys think that there will be two or more distinct Americas as in one half of America is highly technocratic, plutocratic, and holding on to the ownership mindset, the other half being socialist? Well, technocrats are more aligned with socialism than they are with capitalism. He said in the future, like 20, 40 years from now, you're talking maybe
That's
18
right.
months from now.
That's going on. That's going on right now, man. That tomorrow's now, man. That's just good. It's going down. It's going down in the club. It's going down.
If you ever thought that corporate socialism wasn't a thing, think again.
Yeah.
That's all. That's
all it's ever been.
Economy.
That's all it's ever been.
You've got corporate socialism going down on a regular. In fact, I damn they want to call it communism. They're running this down on the regulars. We're seeing this all day long. This was going down all day. And to prove it, look at all the government contracts and so forth that are given specifically to large corporations.
Well, we'll cover
government hitting on a regular and consistent basis.
Well, in the going, I want to cover that National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence report, right? Because that was compiled by all the heads of your tech, your big tech companies. So if you don't think that there's some sort of socialist angle, right, to how the government and corporations that operate within its jurisdictions interact with each other, think again.
And what do you think of this merger mania? And all this stuff is about merging all these big corporations together and keeping you from competing. You know, these guys are not about competition to a large extent. They have what they call competition, but they have more cartels more than anything else. Cartels.
That's why they come together. That's why they come together in
You
this
know,
whole
this
sort of commission.
this is what this is about. And just like when you see, you know, you might look at Narcos or something else like that, and you look at that. Oh, look at these Latino boys, and they're sitting here, you know, cutting up the drug trade, and they got their cartels of Cali and Medellin, and you know, and all the others. But you know, oh, that's great entertainment. It's great, but that's exactly what's going on in your large American corporate structure as well.
Oh, you damn right.
So that's what's going on. I just say people just need to start studying, just get a better understanding of the system that you're underneath. I know the media is not going to give it to you because they don't want you to understand it. Brothers here, myself, who understands this intimately at a deep level. I don't try to drop a lot of stuff down because some of this shit is kind of, it can be confusing to people. But at the end of the day, to simplify it and keep it simple, take a look at major cartels that are out here running shit. And they're passing the Dutchie all day long. They pass the joint, baby. They're passing the
left
J.
hand side. To the
They're
left hand
passing
side.
the J, and they ain't giving you a puff. It is what it is. And then they're telling you to compete when they're sitting back making all the money, and they've got their cartels running. So you have to really look at what's going on. People itself here, in order to deal yourself in, you have to play hardball, and you're going to need numbers, and you're going to need. That's why I'm talking about getting involved with what we say here, what Mike and Em are talking about here is, you know, dealing with things on a cooperative, collective level and so forth. These are options. These are very realistic options that work. That work. And you know, I don't know if you guys that want to have children and families and so forth. Do you really want your kids to be serfs? To be in a serfdom? I have some deep questions about that, and I see some of the radical nature of some of these kids and how some of these kids are acting. It's just that they see this. And when they've sat down and they've started to poll a lot of younger millennials and so forth, they have a more favorable view of socialism than the older generation did. They have that view. And they're not wrong in seeing it that way. They see what's going on. They see the fucking. So they're like, hold on a second, maybe we might want some changes. This is what they're looking at. So that's what's going on. And some of these kids are not wrong in their thinking, to think in some of these ways. And we're gonna have to change in that. You know, one thing I know, there will be change, and we have to start thinking about how this change is gonna work for our betterment. You know, we have to look at that. Okay, go ahead, man. Go ahead, guys.
No, you good, Nagone. Good shit.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, I'm just looking at this document here, and it says Freedom City organizing principles. The campaigns are led by directly impacted communities, pro-Black, use narratives and organizing practices that leave no marginalized community behind, shift control of resources and political power to impacted communities, deepen relationships across oppressed communities. This is similar to Pan-Africanism, but to a more broader scale locally. So very interesting stuff. Rikers Island Prison holds as many people with mental health needs as all psychiatric hospitals in New York State.
An obscenity under the eyes of God. An obscenity, literally an obscenity under the eyes of God. I mean, how do you explain that? How does it work? Just how do you explain that, guys? It's just, how do you explain that? Anyway.
NYPD funds could hire over 2,000 social workers or over 2,000 special education teachers. 100,000 New Yorkers are arrested for not paying fares annually. So you're talking about people who jump the turnstile or something like that. 24,000 misdemeanor fare evasion arrests in the subway in 2013 cost $42 million. How much does it cost to get on the subway in New York?
God damn.
It's
$275, right?
$275. Yeah, I have a Metro card. I forget how much I put on it, but yeah, it's $270. I think it's $270. Oh, no, $225. Excuse me, $225. $225.
Unbelievable, man.
Damn.
But listen, everybody who comes out of that jail, they got to pay their way out.
Yeah.
So they keep people who were poor, getting hammered, throw them in jail. They pay the way out, and the system keeps rolling because this is about economics, about dollars and cents. It's dollars and cents. The rich don't do anything. They grab a whole lot of poor people by volume. They each have them pay a certain amount of money into the system, and it comes out to be billions of dollars. And they keep it moving. That's how that works.
The campaign goal: we demand the city council invest the $97 million annual dollars proposed for 1,000 new cops towards resources that build strong communities. Our taxpayer dollars should be invested in some of the following examples. So we went over the mental health and stuff like that. But it's interesting. Well, look how long this list is. Shit. Yeah,
No, they went in, bro.
Yeah, they went in. This is the type of stuff that we were talking about the other night with social equity programs and things of that nature with one of the other panel members. And this is how you get things done. It's not with fancy cameras and microphones and stuff like that. This is how you get shit done.
Thank you, bro. I'm just saying, bro. That's why I'm glad that you're pulling this up.
Great stuff.
Because I need people to really understand this, that this right here, what you're looking at, this is sort of like the first proof of concept that we really started to base our philosophies on fourth industrialization. It's this shit. And if you look at this is very detailed.
Yeah. Funds could provide 62,500 low-income New Yorkers with free train and bus access. Public transportation helps working class communities maintain distant jobs. Youth Jobs Program in New York Summer Youth Employment Program, SYEP, only employs 22% of its 132,593 applicants. A Chicago Jobs Program employed students at a cost of $30,000 per student. The Chicago program resulted in a 51% drop in violent crime arrests. Social benefits of reduced crime were estimated at $1,700 per student. A similar NYC program using police funding could potentially employ 310,000 youth in New York.
De Blasio and them, would like to see that, but I think the corporate structure and system doesn't want that.
Yeah.
They want you, and I hate to say it, I think the municipalities themselves for revenue generation, they don't want that. They want you arrested, paying, torn out in frame, and rolling the way it is. They want that.
Yeah.
They don't like the fact that that criminality has gone down in the Black community considerably. And so you have cops walking around and you started seeing arrests, all kind of ridiculous arrests being made. But then they showed you when they got mad at de Blasio, cut them back, said, "Oh, we're gonna have our shutdown of the police for a while." Crime actually went down. So police come and they gin up a lot of crime because they fuck with people. Yeah. And they tend to gin up a lot of this stuff. So that's when I talk about the aspect of evil. I've watched this too long. I've watched this far too long. Sit down and to say what I'm seeing is some speculation. No, I know what this is about.
Well, there's the prison industrial complex does need its human capital resources.
Well, you're a resource. They need you in there. They want you in there. They will create crimes for you. They will create shit to put you up in there. The police, when you have a large police presence, they're helping to create more crime. What do I mean by that? They're not saying that you're jaywalking, they're gonna grab you, then they're gonna harass you. What the fuck you doing? Get off of me! You're fighting me. Next, boom, 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 boom. You're dealing with these pumped up charges. They'll kill one or two of you, and then they'll grab a few others and hike you up and jack you up, and create lots of grab some young kids, drive around their bikes, come around and fuck with you. They create shit to get people going. You don't a lot of these cops are fucked up. I mean, they want this. They want this disorder. And if they don't have it, they'll try to create it. That's one of the biggest problems that we've had. Very low crime rates. So crime rates have been down, and these guys are not very happy about that. You would think they'd be very happy about this. The system, it moves, it drives on a certain level of this.
I mean, how do you justify such a police force, right? How do you justify the equipment, the weaponry, and all that if the crime isn't there?
The crime's not there. They don't need it. Then they go into certain areas, and next thing you know, they set up these these look like these these trailers of cops, and then they have all these sucker ladies walking around, looking to gin up shit. And you just walk around, look at somebody, like, hey, what's up, man? What's up? Hey, ain't nothing going down with the rent, baby. What's up? So, so these guys are looking to gin up a lot of stuff. Now the crime is down because people are, no, it's not because the cops are around. People have decided that this is what they don't want. They don't want this criminality. They don't want this shit. They'd rather have people going to school and working and doing this. This is what people would rather have. The communities made these decisions, but you don't get credit for that either. Anyway, that's what we're looking at. There is a lot of evil out here. Unfortunately, I keep going on it, and a lot of it's focused directly on our community because we are the community that gets to get hammered to open up shit for everyone else, so they can get everyone else cracked as well. But they use us as that battering ram first, and I think it's about time for that to come to an end. And it should have been this way for a long time, but we really have to talk more about it, educate ourselves a lot more, and look to organize. That's the key here. These conversations are good to have as long as people start to organize. We really have to do that. And I know a lot of people don't think that it works, but it does, especially when it's effective. And one of the biggest things that they don't want you to have in this whole process of getting it organized and involved is increasing your level of education and the level of education for your kids. They don't want that. The system does not want that. They don't want you better educated and having a more orderly community that better educates its children, because that shifts the balance of power. You don't want that. There are those interests out here that don't want it. I just put that out there so folks hear it. You don't want to believe it, fair enough, but that's a big part of what's going on.
Reality.
Anyway.
Funds could increase resident associations by $281,437 in all 334 NYCHA buildings. Educational programs and workforce development for adults and youth. Support resident watch programs with appropriate cameras and lighting. Tools for campaign development, strategic goals and tactics. Primary goal, City Council invests the $97 million in $97 annual dollars proposed for 1,000 new cops towards resources that build strong communities. Secondary goal, end broken windows policing at NYC City Council primary target. Tactics, pass resolutions at heavily policed community boards calling for the end of broken window policing and a divestment from policing and an investment in the needs of our community. Host community public education events about the budget and broken windows policing. Engage in direct action targeting key budget areas and elected officials. Give workshops in organizations and community groups about broken windows policing. Recruit education, housing, and other non-policing advocates to make a demand for the funds scheduled to expand the NYPD. The campaign lost. City Council and Mayor decided to invest in 1,300 new police officers. So this is what, this is how they think. This is how, your government thinks of you. So
yeah, this is what we were just talking about. New cops. We need a bunch of square-headed fucking big fat-bellied sucker ladies running around with guns, who hate you with guns.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? For what? For what?
Alameda County set aside half of their public safety funding. I don't know where this is in New York. Alameda County set aside half of their public safety funding for community programs and services that prioritize job training, education, housing, and healthcare for people coming out of jail. Alameda County Administrative Secondary Target, Tactics, Occupy County Board of Supervisors, waiting rooms, public comment at Board of Supervisor meetings pressured the board to pass a resolution. Direct action to shut down the Board of Supervisors meeting. We presented the Board of Supervisors with an alternate budget that allocates more funding towards programs and services that are cost effective and reduce recidivism. Jail beds cost nearly $50,000 per year, while providing on-the-job training costs $4,000. Studies show that fewer people leaving jail will recidivate if they are employed. Without stable housing, people are 7 times more likely to recidivate back in. A strong coalition came together in monthly meetings to discuss overall campaign strategy. Justice Reinvestment Coalition, Communities United for Restorative Youth, Youth Justice, Urban Strategies Council, Oakland Community Organizations, Alameda County Coalition for Criminal Justice Reform, constituents from the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, Forward Together, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, and the Alameda Labor Council. The Jobs Not Jails campaign secured millions for reentry programs in Alameda in an important step forward in tearing down the web of criminalization and incarceration that entraps too many Alameda County residents, especially low-income people and people of color. In March 2015, the Board of Supervisors voted to pass Supervisor Keith Carson's proposal to allocate 50% of the public safety and realignment funds towards community-based reentry programs and services in 2015, 2016. These people are hard at work, man. Yeah, I got to look at this again another day. So
they'd rather, the bottom line is simplified, they'd rather put money in putting police on the streets to crack your head than to put money involved in education programs, job training programs, and so forth to make you even a more productive citizen. That's what this is about. And to feed the prison industrial complex, because it too is a new cottage industry and business that's got to maintain its existence as well. So this is some evil. This shit's evil, bro. This is some evil shit.
They're going $50,000. If you're a capitalist, 50,000 on one hand and 4,000 on the other. Which one would you rather have, bro?
Hey, listen, man. We already know what this is about, but then look at it. That you're making a profit, but what's coming out on the other end? Fucking sausage, man. What are you making?
They don't have to care if they destroy the country in the process.
You know, I mean, this is the stuff I'm talking about. So I say evil. There's just nothing else to say. This shit is fucking evil, bro. And this is not just me. Oh, it's evil. Look at what this is coming out. I mean, I have children, grown, grandson. You know what I'm saying? This is what's up. This is what's up. I got massive skin in this game. A lot of the other guys have kids out of here as well. This is not a joke. You know, what are you making? What is this? You know, the older I get, the sicker this shit becomes.
no, but you know, people want to know, like, oh, well, has the Brain Trust done this? And has the Brain Trust done that? Oh, yeah, well, we were doing that in 2018, bro. We were doing that in 2018.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know, people want to talk about cybersecurity now, and it's just one of those things. You know, people always question the legitimacy of what we're doing over here. That's the type of stuff that we've been working on.
All right. Well, you know, question it on Sunday when we fire up the micro transport live stream. You know. Yeah. Question it then as well. Question it. Actually, don't question anything we're talking about right now. Why don't you go back and question the blockchain conferences, and go and question the cybersecurity conferences over on the continent. Go question those too. By the while you're at it.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people who have criticisms and who claim to be pro-Black and this and that, that sort of document that we just read, you know, from the Ujima site, shows the type of work that gets done by real pro-Blacks, not these people who sit around debating on live streams about whether or not, women can reproduce children on their own, or whether or not women should have rights. They don't do things like that. They're really out there putting boots on the ground. I've met these people many times over the last few years. I know what they're doing. So I know what we're doing, So is capitalism, something that's going to be here long term? I don't think so. Based on all the, the numbers and the analytics, I don't think that's going to be here long term. I don't even think capitalism is even benefiting Black people at this point. You don't even have $400 in your savings account. I don't think this is working out for you, bro.
Ouch.
And we've seen way too many failures of it over the last 100 and over the last 100 years. Or even going back to 1907, you last 115 years or so. 100. We've seen immense failures going down on a kind of on a very kind of cyclical basis, and used to be every 20 years, but now it's starting to happen in greater frequency, which says you're coming to an end of a system. You're coming to the end of something because it's starting to happen more and more and more and more. So you're coming to a big crash at some point in time. It's going to totally change this thing. It's a non-sustainable system the way it is, and the ultra supreme greed, short-sightedness, avarice, hatred, savagery, stupidity, and some inherent evil of what we've got going on. It's just not going to work. It's not going to be sustainable. Just as fundamentally it's not. And many economists and others know this. They don't want to say it because they're getting paid a lot to keep their mouths shut. But that's where we are. Here we're going to tackle it realistically. We're going to talk about it in some real terms. Many are not going to like it, but it is what it is. And, the numbers prove it. The numbers prove it. And this latest iteration that we have right now, how we're going to get out of this, what's going to come out of this is going to be very interesting. Very interesting. So, I think we as Black people have to come up with some very realistic answers that we have done before in the past. We may have to, grab hold again and start again. In many ways, there are many other pieces we've got to add on to this, but we're going to have to deal with some of what we're talking about, here fundamentally. We're going to have to get with some of the fundamentals on this, and we have to get back to that. It's a tough game, but capitalism, from what we're seeing, okay, especially over the last 112, 113, 14 years or so, has been an exceedingly shaky system on its own. Very shaky. Very shaky.
All right, I think we'll just close out here then. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust when those posts on the community tab. There's a document description beneath the video for you to actually reference from. If you let me see. Okay. All right, shalom, everyone.